Testing.
Dex and Jeff, can you test your microphones to make sure you can hear us?
All right, Alicia, can you hear me, Jeff Schneider?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Your audio is really scratchy. I don't know if it's the same for Dex or not.
Yeah, it's poor audio quality. Can you hear me, Alicia?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nobody wants to sit next to me.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. Let's call it to order. Good late afternoon or evening. Today's date is June 12, 2023. The time's 5:30 p.m. We are at 10 West State Street, which happens to be where the Marshalltown City Hall Council chambers are, and we are at a regularly scheduled meeting. The meeting is now called to order. With those who are able, please join us in the pledge. Thank you. Very good. Roll call, please.
Hoop,
Here.
Isom,
Here.
Kell,
Here.
Lottiehoff,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Very good. Full house. Time to read the proviso. Members of the public may make comments on any item that was not on the agenda during this time. The speaker shall approach the mic, state your name and address for the record. Limit your comments to 3 minutes unless I authorize more. Speak directly to and make comments to the mayor and council as a whole. And the mayor and councilors shall not engage in any discussion or debate on items raised by members of the public at this time, and no action may be taken on any items raised in public comments so that we can comply with the open meetings laws. With that said, is anybody wishing to come and make public comment? Microphone's open.
Hello, Jim Shaw, 522 North 2nd Street. I'm here today to speak about dog attacks. Because of the limited amount of time I've had at previous meetings, I will continue, but with something a little different tonight. At the last council meeting, I was asked a couple of questions. The first, what am I hoping to accomplish by my comments at every city council meeting? The answer is resolve our dog ordinance, revise them. Our current ordinance does have a leash law or a dog at large requirement. This is a part that I would like to see more strictly controlled. However, I would like to commend the police department, as I have seen some dog at large citations in the past month. I don't know the amount of fines, but I'm sure that it was not adequate. It doesn't need to be just a slap on the wrist. This is not a deterrent. A substantial fine will encourage the dog owner to be more vigilant about his dog running loose. First-time offenders also need to be aware that our ordinance says a dog is to be spayed or neutered after a second dog at large incident. This is why we need to keep accurate records. My fiance was walking her dog a couple days ago in her neighborhood when she saw an uncontrolled pit bull by its owner in his property. The owner and the pit bull both saw her as she stopped and waited for him to leash his dog. He did not, almost seeming to dare her to get closer. She did not. She reversed course, which she should not have had to do, and called the police. I do not know the outcome of that call. This very easily could have ended very differently. The uncontrolled pit bull could have attacked, injuring or killing her dogs, and maybe injuring or killing her, as it did a little boy in Waterloo a month ago. I also assure you that if that had happened, it would have surely resulted in the immediate death of that pit bull. The Marshalltown bite ordinance is a free bite ordinance, which allows a dog one free bite before consequences happen. The chief of police and a qualified vet are authorized but not required to declare the dog vicious, and the owner must get $100,000 liability insurance on the dog. The problem, no insurance company will issue a policy after a dog has been declared vicious. Our ordinance says that a vicious dog that without provocation that bites a human being or domestic animal shall be surrendered to the Animal Rescue League and euthanized. Part of our ordinance needs to be rewritten along with the reinstatement of dog licensing for all dogs in Marshalltown. We need to know how many dogs we have in town in addition to their breed and their location. The location of all dogs should be made available to everyone so that they can be aware of where they are. I know people will say we don't have a pit bull problem in this town. If you live on the south side of town, you're right. I drive around town almost every day, and I don't recall seeing one pit bull on the south side of 6th Street Viaduct. But north of that, there are at least 12 pit bulls within a 5-block area where I live. Most of those are barely under control, pulling their owners down the sidewalk while their owners have smug looks on their face as you cross the street or change direction to avoid them. That's a fact, and it's a problem. The other question asked of me was how long I am going to continue to speak about this problem at every council meeting. My answer to that, I worked at Emerson Process Management for 37 years, and I'm a 16-year UAW retiree. I have nothing but time.
You mentioned you might go over. You were right on.
I told you it's close.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in the open mic session? Seeing nobody approaching the mic, let's go on to mayor, council, and administrator comments. Does any councilor wish to make any opening comments?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
I'd like to remind people the 4th of July is coming up. We are fundraising. If you'd like to send a check, help us out, you can send it to the Marshalltown Central Business District Fireworks Fund. Deb here is collecting it for us. She's our financial guru, I guess. But it does benefit all the town. I know the whole town can see them, whether up close or far away, but it does cost quite a bit of money, and it would be really nice if we could get a really nice donation going. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Temporary City Administrator, do you have any
Sure.
comments?
Can you guys hear me all right? I just want to say how proud we should
A
be.
little closer to the mic will
Sorry.
make it way better.
I am very impressed with the department directors we've had. Jessica left a list of things that we needed to get paying attention to for the next couple months. And everybody's pitched in, and I think we're on target to keep up with all the things that she put on there. So just wanted you guys to know that as council, that we know the list, and I think we're working together, and I think either we've addressed them or we're in the process of finding an answer. So just wanted to share that tonight.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else up here? I don't have any comments tonight. Very good. Now we'll see if anyone wants to move to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Would you read those? Well, that carried. Read those 20 items if you would.
Approve the minutes for the May 22nd, 23 meeting and a bill list in the amount of $3,638,105.12. Approve liquor license renewals for the Depot Liquor and Grocery at 114 North Center Street, El Portal at 1716 South Center Street. Approve Iowa retail permit application for cigarette, tobacco, and nicotine vapor from July 1st, 23 to June 30th, 24 for Seven Rayos Liquor Store at 120 East Main Street. Dollar General number 4206 at 2413 South Center Street. Dollar General number 2019 at 408 South 9th Street. Dollar General number 21858 at 104 West State Street. Jiffy number 922 at 111 South 3rd Avenue. Shag at 2501 South Center Street, number 1450. Bonds Pub at 22 North 1st Avenue. Walgreens number 03196 at 5 East Anson Street. Yesway number 1148 at 1701 Iowa Avenue West. Approve the civil service new hire list for police officer and accounting clerk 1. Approve the April 2023 financial statements. Receive the building and trade permit report for May 2023. Appoint Abigail Pelzer to the Stormwater Advisory Committee for a 3-year term ending December 31st, 25. Appoint Aaron Carpenter to the Stormwater Advisory Committee, a 2-year term ending December 31st, 24. Appoint Melissa Taps to the Stormwater Advisory Committee, 1-year term ending December 31st, 23. Resolution 2023-117 approving the city fee schedule. Resolution 2023-118 approving a contract for roadway maintenance services at the Iowa Highway 14 from Iowa Avenue to Woodland Street between the City of Marshalltown, Iowa, and the Iowa Department of Transportation, created pursuant to Chapter 28E.12 of the Iowa Code. Resolution 2023-119, approving a contract for the roadway maintenance services at the Iowa Veterans Home between the City of Marshalltown, Iowa, and the Iowa Department of Transportation, created pursuant to Chapter 28E.12 of the Iowa Code. Resolution 2023-120, approving the Marshalltown Central Business District Agreement for Public Services. Resolution 2023-121, accepting and awarding the bid for providing salt and ice and snow control for the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year in the City of Marshalltown, Iowa, in the amount of $72.03 per ton. Resolution 2023-122, approving an electric line easement with Interstate Power and Light Company for parcel 841826457005. Resolution 2023-123, in support of local option sales and service tax for the City Estate Center. Resolution 2023-124, authorizing the use of $5,000 in council-designated local option sales tax for the Marshalltown 4th of July fireworks display. Resolution 2023-125, allowing for alcoholic beverages in the public park for the Live After 5 events. Resolution 2023-126, allowing for open containers on designated public ways for the MCBD Be Ridiculous Days event. Resolution 2023-127, allowing for open containers on designated public ways and in a public park for the 13 District Harvest Market event.
Thank you. That saved us about 45 minutes. On to item G, reports. One of those tonight is the community risk assessment. Chief.
Good evening, David Ryerson, Marshalltown Fire Department. So each year I provide you with an annual report, and basically what that annual report does, it talks about what we did in the year and compares it to what we've done in previous years. So this document is completely different. What this document is designed to do is to make you aware of risks that are in our community and how those risks affect the city and affect the fire department. As your fire chief, I believe that this is a part of my responsibility to make the council aware of the things that are going on and how they affect us. So when you look at community risk assessment, it's an examination that involves, it's a process of examining the risks for fire and non-fire emergencies and how they impact us. So specifically what we're looking at is life safety items. So what danger are there to occupants and structures? It looks at economic loss, and that economic loss can be in jobs, it can be in property and income that the city may receive. And then it looks at environmental impact or long-term danger that can, long-term damage that's potential. Additionally, when we look at the risk, we categorize them as high, medium, and low, and then we have special as well. And then when we look at those risks, they're categorized as are they high probability, low probability, are they high consequence and low consequence. So community risk factors have an impact on both our fire and non-emergency response emergencies. This includes evaluation of community demographics, natural hazards, transportation networks, building construction and occupancy, and water supply. So if you look at the demographics, according to figures, it shows that the demographic breakdown in Marshalltown is approximately 32% Hispanic, and we've noticed that those demographics are continuing to change. Those non-English speaking cultures make communication for us more difficult. In Marshalltown, households that have a language other than English spoken is almost 32%. Additionally, cultural traditions can lead to increased opportunities for fire in celebrations and in preparation of food. When we talk about natural hazards, it's something we know well about here in Marshalltown, having been through a tornado and a derecho in the past 5 years. But this also includes things like floods and droughts. Fortunately, we're not experiencing the flooding part, so that's good. Transportation networks. They create a huge risk for us. Highways 30, 330, and 14, as well as rail traffic through the community, provide opportunity for significant emergencies. And all you really have to do is look at what just happened recently in Ohio, and you'll see what type of hazard those create. As far as building construction, if you look at our community, we have buildings that go back to the early 1900s. So we have every type of building construction available located in this town, and each one has their own inherent risk. And then lastly is water supply. We are very fortunate that we have a very good water supply. Currently, there's 1,000 fire hydrants in operation in our community that covers nearly all of the city. Our peak capacity exceeds our peak usage. However, if we did have a large industrial fire, we would have to, water department would have to kick in the towers and take the water from there to meet those types of fire flow needs. So to assist us in our evaluation of the community, we divided the city up into 5 fire zones. And then what we did is we looked at the number and types of properties located in each. And additionally, we noted the special hazards and high-risk properties in each of those zones. So if you looked at the document, in total, there are 10,943 properties located in Marshalltown, and almost 85% of those are residential. So residential fire, if you look at the probability and consequence, it is a high probability, low consequence type of fire. And while there are significant business and industrial properties located in town, these occupancies are low probability for a fire, and they have a high consequence. Fire hazards are generally related to the type of construction, age and upkeep of buildings and occupancies. Since Marshalltown is almost 85% residential, wood frame construction is predominantly found. Since some properties date back to the early 1900s, various types of building constructions exist. And like I said earlier, there are significant and special hazards with each type of construction. So according to the National Fire Protection Agency, fire departments responded to 1.35 million fires nationwide in 2021, resulting in almost $16 billion in property damage. Additionally, 3,800 people lost their lives. The majority of fire fatalities occur in residential structures, which is a problem for us because that is the majority of what we have. If you look at the most common causes of residential fires, they're cooking fires, from heating equipment, electrical fires, intentionally set, and smoking material. And if you look at Marshalltown and how our fires lay out, we are very similar to that national trend. Dilapidated and vacant buildings are also an issue for us in Marshalltown. In 2021 and 22, the fire department responded to numerous intentionally set fires in abandoned properties. The city has been working to eliminate these properties, but it is a time-consuming process, and the number of properties far exceeds the city's budget to abate them. During the time frame from 2017 to 2022, Marshalltown Fire responded to 568 fires with a fire loss of little over $2.5 million. And unfortunately, that also includes 1 civilian fire fatality. So another thing that this document did was it defined and looked at critical task analysis. So while it's possible to state what critical tasks must be taken to extinguish a fire, it is not always possible to determine how many firefighters are needed to accomplish it. The National Fire Protection Agency documents 1710 and 1720 provide guidance, but these standards are many times viewed as recommendations or guidelines, and they don't carry the rule of law with them. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, they identified the critical tasks necessary to mitigate a structure fire based on the National Fire Protection Agency's information. And they're referred to critical tasks because they must be performed either simultaneously or in coordinated manner. Failure to do so increases the risk of property loss and threat to life safety. Additionally, it exposes firefighters to additional risk. So those critical tasks include search and rescue, fire attack on an initial line, fire attack or exposure protection with a secondary line, forcible entry, ventilation. You have to have a pump operator, For the pumper, you have to have an operator for the aerial device. You have to have an incident commander, a rapid intervention team, and those are the people that go in and save firefighters when they're injured or lost inside of a structure, a safety officer, and an investigator. You may have also noticed the term effective response force in the document I provided you. NIST also termed the phrase effective response force as it refers to the number of firefighters and apparatus assigned to a first alarm fire capable of extinguishing the fire and preserving life. So if you look at effective fire response force, we said roughly 85% of our properties are residential in Marshalltown, and these are considered moderate fires. According to critical task analysis, an effective response force for this type of fire is 16 firefighters. Currently, each shift at Marshalltown Fire consists of 8 firefighters. Given Kelly days, vacations, and comp time usage, most shifts are staffed with 6 firefighters. In 2020, the department was staffed with 28 firefighters and responded to 1,952 calls for service. In 2022, the department is staffed with 24 firefighters and responded to 3,422 calls for service. And since 2018, requests for service have increased 38% or 944 runs. So, Marshalltown Fire, we're kind of on an island. We're the only career department in the county. So if we have an event that is too large for us to handle, we have 3 options. One, we can call back our personnel, but you're looking at 20 to 25 minutes to actually start getting people back to do anything. We can request mutual aid from one of our mutual aid partners, which are all the volunteer fire departments in the county. And if they have people to respond, you're looking at that same type of time frame for response or longer. And then our third request could be to other career fire departments that are located in other counties. Well, for us, that's Newton in Jasper County or Ames over in Story County. But still, you're looking at 20 to 30 minutes before you're going to have any additional assistance on scene. So in responding to a fire, the fire department typically has 8 to 10 minutes to take effective life safety and extinguishing actions. And with an average response time of 5 to 6 minutes, that doesn't leave us a lot of time to do something, especially when we do not have an effective response force. In addition to that, there are 52 buildings in our community that are 3 stories in height. And when you add height to that, where you're having to do ladder rescues, that increases the risk significantly. And then overlapping calls that I have been talking to you about for the last several years, they have increased significantly in the last 2 years, with 841 of those occurring last year. Presently, we're over 350 for this year. And lastly, let's talk about EMS, because that's the other side of the coin that we deal with. And as we know from annual reports, that EMS makes up the majority of our calls for service. Not only does it make up a majority of our service calls, but it also adds a level of risk that affects all other areas of our operations. Based on the past 5 years, requests for EMS will continue to increase due to things like increasing number of homeless, which are being driven by those with mental health and substance abuse issues, those living at poverty level with no health insurance, and an aging community that is experiencing numerous health issues. It is my opinion that EMS in the county is at a crossroads. We are already experiencing delayed responses and instances of no ambulance being available to transport a patient. Current resources, both career and volunteer, are already taxed. Volunteer agencies are getting out of the service due to lack of volunteers. LeGrand, who was one of the mutual aid departments for Unity Point, they are selling their ambulance and getting completely out of it because they don't have the volunteers to man it. And lastly, providing EMS services is costly, and insurance reimbursement does not cover the cost of providing the service in most cases. So there's not a lot positive going on when it comes to relationship to EMS. So my question and my challenge is, we need to develop some contingency plans. There's no easy answer to addressing the fire and EMS service in the city. Current fiscal restraints and competing city needs make the decision more difficult. However, the discussion needs to occur and a plan developed to lower community risk. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Any questions up here first? I can ask for public comment or questions as well.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. Great report. I think the influencers in the community need to influence Unity Point into stepping up to the plate and providing the proper medical and EMS services that the community needs. Thank you.
Linda Clark, 306 South 2nd Avenue, where I've lived my entire life. And I want to thank Chief Ryerson for the very thorough account of what he has done. I have been very pleased with his overseeing all of the fires that have occurred here in the city. Did not surprise me with the report as to what he said about language being a problem. I have been concerned with that as well. Because if we have non-English speaking people, that is definitely a problem. And thank you, Chief, for all of the good work that you did when the fire happened at 304 South 2nd Avenue. I was able to observe all of the good care and everything that took place there. And once again, thank you, Chief. You know how much I've always appreciated you and all you've done for the city of Marshalltown. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else? Okay, good report. On to the next item, H, which is motions. What's our first one of those?
Motion to approve 2 14-day special Class C alcohol license for Thirsty Pigs with outdoor service for the Live After 5 events on July 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th.
Move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, the Friends of the Orpheum are hosting the Live After 5 concerts this year at West End Park. They'll be every Friday night in July. They've hired Thirsty Pigs out of Ames to supply the alcohol license and the service for the event. And the resolution for alcohol in the park was approved on the consent agenda.
Any discussion up here? Any public comment? The dates listed end on July 28th, and I happened to run into one of the organizers of this event, or these events, recently, and he told me that's going to kind of be the finale with a lot of relatives of stars the day the day the music died. So some of the Buddy Holly and other people are going to have family members here, so you might want to make a note on your calendar that that might be kind of a special night, and the other events they're pleased to have gotten the bands in that they have. If there aren't any other comments or anybody else wishing to speak, let's call the roll.
Thompson?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Hoop?
Oh.
Isom?
Yes.
Kell?
Yes.
Lottiehoff?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Very good. That carried. Next motion.
Motion to approve a 5-day special Class C alcohol license with outdoor service for Zamora Fresh Market for the MCBD Be Ridiculous Days on July 29th.
Move for approval. Second.
Discussion.
Yes, MCBD is hosting the Be Ridiculous Days on the 29th downtown. They're partnering with Zamora Fresh Market to supply the alcohol license and the service for the event. The resolution for open containers in the roadway will be on Main Street from Center to First Avenue, and that was approved on the consent agenda.
Okay. Discussion up here or out there? Roll call.
Kell?
Yes.
Lottiehoff?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Hoop?
Oh.
Isom?
Yes.
That carried as well. And the third and last motion.
Motion to approve a 5-day special Class C alcohol license with outdoor service for the 13th Street District Harvest Market event on September 8th.
Move for approval. Second.
Discussion on this one.
13th Street District is hosting the annual Harvest Market and Pork Tornadoes concert on Friday, September 8th. They have applied for their own liquor license and will provide the service for the event. And the resolution for open containers on 13th Street from Summit to Fremont, including the parking lot and Weston Park, was approved on the consent agenda.
Discussion up here or out there? Roll call on this one.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
Yes.
That carried as well. On to resolutions. What's our first one of those?
Resolution 2023-128, calling an election on proposed ordinance amendment increasing the franchise fee under the city's gas utility franchise with Interstate Power and Light Company.
Let's call for a motion to approve it first.
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on this one.
Your Honor, if I may. I believe we're going to put the local option sales tax referendum on that same ballot. No? The November?
I've not heard that that's been something that's been, that you guys want to move forward on that.
Okay, let me rephrase that then. If we put the local option sales tax referendum on that same ballot, my fear is it will be voted no as with the franchise fee. I think it's a mistake to put the franchise fee vote on the November ballot, because until we get our financial situation under control and balance the budget, this council needs to do a better job, the new city administrator. I think we would be committing suicide to do away with the local option sales tax. So I'm not in favor of putting this on the November ballot. I would rather us let there be a special election, let the franchise fee be a standalone on its own merits, for or against. Thank you, Your Honor.
Other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, can I just say a couple things?
You may.
So all staff did is try to put the options out to the council. There was no decisions. It's not our decisions for staff. We just wanted to make sure that the council has all options to make that determination. So just for the public, if the council does not take any action on that tonight, the opportunity for somebody to ask for a special election still goes. Everybody still gets an opportunity to vote on the ordinance as well. Just want to make that clear because it sounds confusing somehow how that works. I just want to make sure that's out there. So if the council so desires and wants to go to the general fund or general election, they'll vote yes. If they vote no, then it's up to somebody else if they want to have a special election. And Deary, if I can add on the local option tax, it expires in FY25, so you do have some other time if you so choose to push it out there. And we have a internal staff that's starting to put the stuff together to show when you guys get a committee together to show exactly what your options are, what dates they are, and how many days you have to notify to make it happen to be an election. So didn't mean to mix the two, but I did want to try and answer your question as well, sir. That's all I want to put out there, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comment up here among the council members? Time for public comment.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. I think the voters are smart enough to answer multiple questions on the ballot. I think it saves the city council or the city taxpayers about $20,000 if we put it on the November ballot. So I think that's actually a good choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Roll call.
Schneider,
No.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
No.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
No.
Kell,
No.
Lottie
No.
Very good. Resolution failed. On to the next one.
Resolution 2023-129, calling an election on proposed ordinance amendment increasing a franchise fee under the city's electric utility franchise with Interstate Power and Light Company.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on this one.
Your Honor, if I may.
Sure.
I'm not for the franchise fees at 5% on gas and electric. It disproportionately penalizes lower income people. Rich people eat the same food, have the same grocery costs that poor people do. The only problem is the poor people, that's a higher percentage of their gross income. So it's a bigger burden on them. Just heard Chief Ryerson talk about language barriers and poverty, aging population. I think we need to get smarter with how we spend money before we ask you, the public, to give us more money. The council, previous to this body, these members, we raised the debt limit, ability to borrow, with the thought that that money would go to streets. It did not. I think it should. And I'm just saying, don't be dissuaded that the promise of putting this money towards streets is going to fix the problem that we should have fixed a long time ago, and we should be borrowing for that, not borrowing for water plazas and other features. So I am completely against these resolutions calling for this franchise fee. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Other council comment?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I was not part of the small committee that explored this option back in the fall, but we were all updated on the investigation and the findings from that. Councilor Thompson talked about his stance. This was never about the 7 of our stances. This was always intended to go to the public. We continue to hear from the public that streets are a problem. This is a potential solution to those streets. It's not up for us to decide. At no point was this our intention to have the 7 of us decide. It was always to go to the public. So there's been a narrative out there that we're driving something at the council level. That's not true. So I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other council comment? Public comment?
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. So it's for the public to decide, but you don't want to put it on the November ballot. You want the public to force a petition to put it on a special election to cost the city $20,000. The logic makes no sense here. And based on the past, per Mr. Thompson, the money promised to roads per Mr. Hoop is 16 years on this council. The money never gets spent to fix roads. It's always to build new roads and new developments. So you won't use this for fixing roads either. So I don't understand. Thanks. Bye.
Other public comment?
Hi, Jim Palmer, 3111 South 8th Street. Being a local business, this is going to affect the whole community by raising this. Because you're going to go ahead and you're going to put this franchise fee that businesses are going to have to pay. And we will see the increase. Guess what I'm going to do as a business? I'm going to pass it down to the consumer. Because that's exactly what I have to do in order to stay in business. I can't cut my profit margins because I'm being assessed what I consider a tax on being able to do business. You've done it already with the stormwater. Now you want to do it again when it comes to this fee. So I really want you to think about that. Because the other thing that starts to happen with businesses my size, I'll find another community to go to that's not trying to tax me out of here. And I'm not afraid to be able to pick up and move. So please keep that in mind when you're deciding on these things, because ultimately, you make the decision. Thank you.
Linda Clark, 306 South Second Avenue. This is an extraordinary fee, which is a tax, and I am part of the community. According to the Chamber of Commerce, I'm in like the 17%. Well, we have been hearing about the homeless and stuff from Chief Ryerson, and this is going to take middle-class people that are trying to make their tax payments and put us down to a level of poverty with what you are doing. There are a number of retired people in this town like myself who have lived here her entire life and has spoken at every council meeting and expressed my opinion. And once again, I am doing this. These fees are not going to be good, just like the last person said. It's going to cause more people to leave, not to come into our city. And I'm not moving. I'm not leaving.
Doris Kinnick, 2020 Catalina Place, Marshalltown, Iowa. Moved here 19 years ago and thought I was going to spend the rest of my life here. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I don't know. But these franchise fees are just ridiculous, and they are a tax. You know it. I know it. You know, there's a 5%. But it's not just 5%. It's 5% for electric, and it's 5% for gas. So it's actually 10%. Think about it that way. 10% more. And as Linda said, and as Chief Ryerson has said, we have a lot of homeless in this community. We have a lot of people who are below the poverty line in this community. So there's got to be a better way. 5%, I know that there are places that have less than 5%, maybe 1%, but it's still a tax. It's still a fee that we as citizens of Marshalltown cannot afford. Thank you very much for your time.
Mic's still open.
Hello, Jim Shaw, 522 North Second Street. As Mr. Palmer said, he's not going to absorb these costs. Okay, and he's not the only one. Every business up there is going to pass the cost on down to the consumer. So I'm not going to get 5%. I'm going to get 5% plus whatever he decides to pass down, and the other business passes down, and the other business passes down. So you're charging me a lot more than 5%. That's it.
Hi, I'm Bill Schendel, 625 West Lincoln Way. The only thought I'd had was that, you know, as a landlord, when they can't pay their rent, then they go for services like nonprofits, churches, you know, the Salvation Army, that kind of thing to help. And it's just going to make them have to dig deeper to help when those people can't pay those utility bills with the increase. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Lyle Heineman, 2804 Arnold Drive. Not long ago, you raised our property tax to $16 a thousand. Now you want a franchise fee. It started out for street repair. Now it's come up with 12% of this for property tax relief, 9% for repair, restoration, cleanup, and other improvements of public-owned property, 9% for public safety, and 70% for reconstruction or repair of streets and highways. As you've heard, businesses will just pass this on to the consumer. So each one of us is going to pay even more. So the only thing I could compare this with is the game Monopoly. You guys seem like you're going to take a chance and roll the dice and hit us again. So I'd like to see the city run like a business, balance the budget, and represent what the people of Marshalltown need. And one more thing. It appears that no one in this room appears to be in favor of this franchise fee, unless someone can tell me differently. Thank you.
The mic is still open. Roll call.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
No.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
No.
Kell,
No.
Lottiehoff,
No.
Schneider,
No.
Okay, that failed as well. And our next one.
Resolution 2023-130, calling an election on proposed ordinance granting Consumers Energy Cooperative a non-exclusive electric utility franchise and establishing a franchise fee.
Move to approve, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
And discussion on this one. Public comment on this one. Roll call.
Lottiehoff,
No.
Schneider,
No.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
No.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
No.
Kell,
No.
That failed as well. Next item is a public hearing. Would you tell us about that?
Public hearing and resolution 2023-131, providing for the conveyance and transfer of title to a portion of vacated but unconveyed alley to the Marshalltown Community School District.
For approval?
Oops, I first need to declare the, or do we do the motion first? I can't remember. Yeah, let me declare the public hearing is open first at 6:17 PM. Did the clerk receive any written comments?
No, Your Honor.
Time for public comments on this one. Seeing no one rushing to the mic, I'll then ask for staff review.
Yes, Your Honor. This is the alley that runs through the middle of the Miller Middle School practice field. There was a council motion in 1941 that was to convey the alley to the school district, and that was never completed. So this action will convey and transfer the vacated portion to combine it with their parcel.
Thank you. Now time for council comments. Not hearing any. I'll declare the public hearing is closed at 6:17. That might set a record, and call for a resolution to approve it.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Very good. That one carried. On to item J, ordinances. What's our first one of those?
Ordinance 15061 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by repealing Chapter 91 Fire Prevention and Protection and adopting a new Chapter 91 Fire Prevention and Protection, which adopts by reference the 2021 International Fire Code with certain amendments. Third reading.
Is there a motion to approve it?
So
Move
moved,
for
Your Honor.
approval, Your Honor.
You got the motion and the second, okay?
I'll second.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, discussion about it then.
David Ryerson, Marshalltown Fire Department. This is the third reading for the ordinance to change the fire code to go from the 2015 International Fire Code to the 2021 International Fire Code. I'll answer any questions you have.
I don't think you'll have any, but, and I don't think there'll be public comment on this one. If I'm wrong, stand up or raise your hand. Roll call.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop.
Yes.
That carried. On to the next ordinance.
Ordinance 15062 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by amending 93.007 alcohol beverages, first reading.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
To discussion on this one.
So this came forward for discussion at the last meeting, and we revised the amendment to require a public use permit and an alcohol license to be obtained in order to have alcohol in the parks, and it does not specifically list out park names. There are exceptions that remain in there for rental buildings at Riverview Park and at the campground.
Thank you. Any council comment on this one? Any public comment on this? Roll call.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
That carried. And our next ordinance.
Ordinance 15063 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by amending Chapter 130 Offenses Against Peace and Safety, first reading.
Move for approval, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on this one.
Yes, Your Honor. This amendment will reinstate language that was removed regarding offenses from vehicles with sirens and noise from tires. It also repeals outdated amendments on trafficking of certain weapons, displaying weapons, and slingshots that were in there from the 1950s. And it updates the zoning district names and removes the Nicholson Ford Nature Area from the hunting within city boundaries code.
Thank you. Good synopsis of that. Any council comments about this one? Any public comment about this one? Roll call.
Lottiehoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
That carried, and I can't help myself, but somebody drove by the office about 3 o'clock today and made the windows reverberate. So if this were in place, I would have turned him in. So let's hope this goes into effect sooner than later. All right, next item is another public hearing. What's this one about?
Public hearing in ordinance 15064 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by amending provisions of ordinance 14806 and the table of special ordinances, Table 1, franchises with Interstate Power and Light Company for a gas utility franchise. First reading.
We'll call the public hearing to order at 6:21 PM. Did you receive any written comments?
No, Your Honor.
Time now for public comments.
Linda Clark, 306 South Second Avenue. This once again is a franchise fee. We are already paying tax fees for our gas and stuff now. And then you want to go into more fees with them? I say no to this, and I think the majority of the people in this room feel the same way as I do about it. And thank you for your time. You well paid.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. So based on the last vote, unless you vote this down, we're going to have a special election. That's going to require a petition. Petition's got to be signed and in for the third reading, which is 4 weeks from now. I'll have the petitions available. Thank you.
Doris Kinnick, 2020 Catalina Place. Well, here we are again. And I guess one thing that I didn't bring up the last time, and now I forgot what it is, but I'll just think about it for a minute, is the fact that utilities prices have gone up. And I'm paying more. I'm sure everyone in this room is paying more for utilities than they did a year ago. So again, You can call it a fee, but we know it's a tax. So, thank you.
Any more public comments? Staff review time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, what you got before, and council, what you got before you is a 5% increase for the Interstate Power and Light Company. And if it was passed, it would add 5% to the, sorry, it would add another 5, thank you, another 5%.
Push the button, push the button.
I turned it off, I apologize.
You gotta hold it down.
I gotta hold it down?
No, you
No.
don't. Okay.
Okay, we'll try it again. So this is the ordinance.
I just know if you're within about 2 inches, you're really louder.
Am I okay here? Testing 1, 2, 3.
No,
Okay.
go closer. I mean, literally within about an inch or two.
How about now? Is that good? All right, here we go. The ordinance before you is a franchise fee of 5% for the Interstate Power and Light Company for gas utility franchise. The previous meeting we had was what the purpose of the revenue that we'd be using it for, and I think you heard that today, where 70% of it's streets and 12%. I can go through those if you want to hear that. It's the same thing we talked about earlier in the council earlier. So any questions you might have, but this is would be the first reading for the franchise fee for Interstate Power for the gas portion of it.
Thank you. Now, after staff review comes council comments. Any of those?
Your Honor, I guess I'll go first.
You bet.
I do support this. Gary, I think you brought up a good point with regards to the debt capacity discussion. I feel like every time we go through the budget season, we're talking furloughs and COLA reductions and everything else, though. It's a revolving door, that conversation. And it's the give and get of what services do you get rid of, what amenities do you demolish and get rid of that we can't upkeep or pay the expenses that come along with it. So, I mean, unless we're going that route, you talk about the dollars that go towards streets. We have the same conversation since I've been on council with regards to the budget, and the dollars keep getting worse, and so it's a revolving door of that. This at least allocates and dedicates the dollars to go toward where we say they're going. To me, and that was kind of part of the breakout when we did that, was streets being the most important, infrastructure being a big piece of that have honestly call it being neglected over the last 20 years that have gotten us to the point where we're at now. And, you know, obviously not a decision we're making here tonight, but that was the whole discussion, right? 35 million was kind of the dollar number that gets spent over 5 to 7 years towards streets alone. And you talk about what that does. It doesn't solve all of our problems, but it solves a big portion of them, or at least gets the ball moving in the right direction. You hear Chief Ryerson up here talking public safety. I think we've all heard Tupper up here talking public safety. I think the dollars and where they're going is where there's the need with a bleeding budget, and this solves problems even if it may not be the most favorable item in front of us today or in the future. I think it's a necessity. I think you look across the communities that have instilled a franchise fee across Iowa alone. We're far behind the time with regards to that, if you want to say it that way. This isn't a new thing. It's just a new thing for this community. Unfortunately, it's one I think we need to hit head on, and I will be voting in favor of this. I guess just to address some of the comments I heard earlier, it's not 10%, it is 5% on your utilities. Obviously, your utilities are a makeup of your gas and your electric both. It just depends on the mix of what supports the home in which you live in. I get the comment you made, Gary, with regards to it costs some people more to live in an older home. This will affect me more than others that live in a newer build, and newer builds are more expensive normally, and so I get where you're going with that, but it doesn't just affect our lower impoverished community members. It affects all across the board, and so those are the few things I took away and heard. Obviously, we'll have continued conversation throughout this evening, and obviously moving forward over the other 2 readings. Obviously, this is a platform to hear all, and I welcome to hear all, but I'd love to hear other things outside of what I have heard tonight, if streets truly are a priority from a community perspective, which is what I've heard continuously, and we have something in front of us in order to solve at least a portion of that, or get some momentum in that direction outside of some of the other areas of growth we've seen throughout our community.
Thanks, Mr. Isom. Other council comments?
Your Honor, if I may.
Your Honor.
Go ahead, Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief since I'm remote. I'm also going to vote in support of this. We have aging road infrastructure. Not everybody is going to get a new street, but the streets that we drive on every day will improve over time if we pass this. There just isn't the money to do it otherwise, so I'm going to be voting in support of this.
Thank you. Mr. Walker? Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry.
I just want to give you an analogy on how I see this. If you'll bear with me for a second. When I was married, my kids were little, they used to get birthday cards from my mom, who was retired and low income. There was a $5 bill in their birthday card, and the kids were excited about that. Well, my former in-laws were millionaires, and in the birthday cards the kids got, there was a $100 bill. So of course the kids were more excited about that. And after a few years of this, watching the kids be excited about the $100 bill, I decided to explain to them and showed them on paper that it was more painful for my mother to give them $5 than it was for my in-laws to give them $100 as a percentage of her gross assets, net assets. Showed them on paper, if my in-laws wanted to match the percentage my mom was giving them, how much money should have been in their birthday card, they almost fell over. Okay? And the reason I'm telling you this story is that's what's happening here. The grocery stores are going to pass this on. JBS is going to pass this on to the grocery stores. Then the grocery store is going to pass it on. Mr. Palmer was correct. All businesses. It hits the majority of the north side of town, the poor side of town. It hits their pocketbook a lot harsher than it hits a married couple both making good incomes at Lennox or Fisher or, doctors or whatever. They can absorb this. The people on the south or on the north side of town can't absorb this. It's just too much of an impact for them. We need to step up, do a better job of managing your finances, your money, before we just go get more. Let's fix the problems we have. We've never held a city administrator accountable since I've been on the council to have a balanced budget. We've always bailed it out. And I don't understand that. Tonight we gave $90,000 to a nonprofit, and I was actually in favor of that. But that's the kind of things that may have to stop for us to balance a budget. We have to draw the line somewhere. So I'm against it. So thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Other council comment?
Your Honor,
Yes.
I would just like to highlight a few things. One, the number one item that I have been contacted regarding since I've joined the council has been streets. And the number one thing that has been surprising, despite knowing the condition of our roads from driving on them myself, it has been really eye-opening to me, especially as I researched opportunities related to franchise fees earlier this year with some other council members. What was really eye-opening is actually the condition of our streets in total, the amount of money it's going to cost to get us quote unquote caught up far exceeds what Councilman Thompson is referring to when he talks about balancing a deficit of $200,000 a year. We really do as a community need to talk long-term about the infrastructure needs. It will go to a vote, and it's important that we have this discussion. There's a precedent in our community where there's been other items that have gone to a vote and failed, only to create an environment where we're actually taking on discussions, having meaningful dialogue about the community that we want to be and how we're going to get to the needs. This franchise fee is one opportunity that we have, one of the only opportunities we have, given the situation that the state is putting communities of our size in the fact that these constraints are only increasing. The time for us to talk as a community about this is now. The time to get real about where we come up with millions of dollars of neglected infrastructure over not just the last couple years, like the last several decades. I know that people are frustrated with the condition of our roads. This is the way forward in addressing that, and that's why I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
I live on the north side, and I've lived there a lot longer than you have, Gary. I'm pretty sure.
My whole life.
Yeah. Your whole life?
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected.
I thought you were on Main Street.
Isn't that considered the north side?
No.
The tracks?
Were you on the north side or the south side of Main Street?
At any rate, okay, Gary's lived there longer than I have. As I look at this, we're talking about raising $35 million to fix the streets in Marshalltown. We're not talking about shoveling an extra $1 million. We're not talking about cobbling along like we have for the last 20 years. Streets are expensive. They're very expensive. Marshalltown has gotten behind by a long shot. I am more than happy to put this on the general election and let the city decide what they want to do. My family is a single income family. I've got a kid at home yet. I'm blue collar, and I don't like spending $1 more on tax than I have to. I really don't. But I also am getting really tired of hitting potholes and things like that we will keep having if we don't do something permanent and start getting some of these streets fixed. Right now, we're spending $10 million on State Street. That's a help. We're going to be spending, $12 million on Main Street coming up soon. But and those are just a few blocks. Consider that Marshalltown has over 170 miles of streets. That's the problem we have. So I think it comes down to, do we want to improve our streets? And it hurts paying extra in tax, I know that. Or are we just willing to live with it? Because even if we Shanghai the budget, stop all progress and everything else, it will not generate what we're going to do right now in a 5-year term. And I believe this sunsets in 5 years. So I am more than happy to live with whatever the taxpayers vote in November. I think they should have a choice in doing this. I fully understand what Jim said. You know, that's a tax on them, but you have to realize there's 311 other cities that have this. So if you're going to move out of town, you're going to have to be pretty picky on what town you're going to go to that doesn't have this already. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council comment?
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Just a little color or context. I found a presentation was done to the city council in 2021, so before our time. But the estimate was historically we spend about $3 million a year on roads. And that's directionally correct still today, even though last year we threw a little more at the roads. To get ahead of this, to make any meaningful change, we need to be in the range of $10 million a year to try to get ahead of this. So yes, in theory, we can find that money in the budget. What positions are we cutting? Who are we laying off? What neighbors do we have that say, sorry for this, roads are more important than the service you provide that the citizens rely on? So that's just kind of the heart of it. This isn't a small fix. It is a huge amount of money. And the ask isn't, I don't feel it's going lightly. There's been a lot of consideration and deliberation amongst the council on how to best find a solution for this. If the public says, no, this isn't the path forward, so be it. But the amount of complaints have to be in relation to what that vote is too. Otherwise, it's wishful thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the council? Well, I think it's time to call the roll.
Close
I thought,
public hearing.
didn't we already do that in a public hearing?
Yeah, we just need to close the public hearing.
Yeah, so we now close the public hearing at, the public comments came before staff review, and that came before council comments. So we now close the public hearing at 6:39 PM. And if we haven't had a motion yet calling for the resolution, I would call for that motion now.
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
Oh.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Huff,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Okay, that one carried. On to the next item.
Public hearing and ordinance 15065 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by amending provisions of ordinance 14807 and the table of special ordinances, Table 1 franchises with Interstate Power and Light Company for an electric utility franchise, first reading.
I'll declare this public hearing is open now at 6:40 PM. Did you get any written comments in the clerk's office?
No, Your Honor.
And now it's time for public comments again.
Mark Eaton, 1007 South 10th Avenue. So let's talk numbers. Prior to the last city administrator, our city debt was 25 million. Today, it's 64 million, roughly. We borrow $10 million a year to spend on garbage in my, we borrowed money for a quiet zone. No quiet zone. We're going to borrow money for a splash pad, water feature, whatever. The people are up in arms against that, don't want that $2.5 million monstrosity. You get $3 million a year in revenue from the gas tax. So you're basically only spending that. You're borrowing $10 million for other things. So if Mr. Kell is right and we need to spend another $10 million, we'll borrow the $10 million. Stop spending it on the garbage, spend it on the roads. The local option sales tax is a lot older than I can remember. 5% of that was supposed to go to roads. Ms. Kinzer and Ms. Steiner went around in 2017 and did a dog and pony show and got everybody to vote to change the local option sales tax to 78% debt relief and 22% slush fund, which we spend on garbage and could be spent on roads. The garbage part's my opinion, sorry, but there are ways to pay for the roads without furloughs and this other stuff. The influencers can talk to UP, Unity Point. They have, if you want to look them up on ProPublica or any other nonprofit website, you can see their endowment. You can see they have money to buy another ambulance or two if they want to. They need influenced to do that, and that will fix our overlapping call problem. California's got a big exodus due to their tax problem. You can create that here if you want. 3 counselors are up for election in November. Just reminding you. So if you do your budget right, you don't have a problem. You don't need a franchise fee.
Other public comment?
Kathy Steinberg, 309 Summit Street. I've lived on both sides of the town, in the new house, and now I made the choice to live on the north side, taking what the city wanted to do at the time, literally, preserve affordable housing. Well, what breeds resentment is that the pain isn't felt equally when the council increases a lot of these fees because of tax abatement. what did I get when I resided my house? That I paid $16,000 to reside, and I've continually made improvements. But my house, I'm sure, when I leave, is still going to be considered very affordable housing. But did I get a tax break? No, my tax assessment went up, my taxes went up. I'm all in favor of increasing the quality of our streets. Obviously, it needs to be done. It's just, I resent, frankly, I'll speak for myself, I resent the fact that there are people that have a lot more expensive houses, and now that I'm retired, a lot more income than I do, that are sitting there not having to pay any city taxes for maybe a decade or more at a time. Where was their input if the streets were so bad? Maybe a payment for the basic infrastructure in lieu of their full city tax payments could and should continue to be assessed, instead of just piling it on the people that, are already trying on the north side of town to keep housing affordable. I thought I was doing something good, and I'm proud of it, and I enjoy my house. And it's just, I want everybody to share the pain, and saying that everybody's taxes are going to go up if this fee is passed. Technically, that's true, but mine have already increased without any abatement for the improvements that I've made. So I'm probably, and frankly, anybody smart, considering a town that they want to move to, they're going to look into these kinds of things and make an intelligent decision if they want to move someplace. And I would certainly look into any town I was going to move to. And the fact that you've liberally, I'm not saying you individually, but the council has liberally passed out tax abatements that have deprived the city of better streets, better infrastructure, better everything. And who has it really favored? The realtors, the developers, and I heard one developer say, well, out here, nobody uses city services. Well, that is a ridiculous statement. Everybody uses the streets, but only a portion of the town is actually paying for them. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Lyle Heineman, 2804 Arnold Drive. If you guys really want to, like Mark Eaton said, I believe you can make your cuts. We don't need a franchise fee. There are other ways to do things. If the businesses in town would put a fee on everything that they wanted and charge it to us, they would go broke. Okay? Let's run this city like a business, and I think you can take care of a lot of your problems.
Jim Palmer, 3111 South 8th Street. I'm finding this amusing a little bit about what I'm hearing, because I've got people up here that have owned businesses, work for companies that they're in charge of departments, and I find it amusing sitting back here and saying, okay, we're not going to run this city as a business. We're going to go ahead and put it back on the taxpayers to bail us out of this, instead of doing what's right, and that's cutting our giveaways. Okay? Just said, you gave $90,000 to a nonprofit. That's money that was here to be used towards something that's important, that my tax dollars went to. But you want to turn around and give it away to nonprofits. Shame on you. Some of you weren't here. Some of you were existing and kept passing the buck. It needs to stop. Be fiscally responsible now. And don't put it on us taxpayers to bail you out for your poor decisions and not being fiscal. Thank you.
Linda Clark, 306 South Second Avenue, and I regret coming late. I want to state this. I have lived here long enough to remember when, one, we didn't have to have door greeters to let us in. It was free to come in and out as we chose. We are a town of 27,000 people. It has been that amount for back in the 90s. We are not getting the growth that the Chamber of Commerce is saying, and just like the previous person spoke, the council has to take responsibility for this. We can't be giving away money. The state is trying to cut things down for property tax, and all it seems to me is our city council is wanting to put franchise fees on us that have lived here and are trying to maintain our property tax and maintain our property the best we can. And we all remember, we all went through the tornado in 2018 and 2020 that lived here then. I am still dealing with that mentally. Not that I have a mental problem. But we have got to be more fiscal here with what is going on. We didn't get to vote for a city administrator. We didn't get to vote for the new power plant that is so efficient for our gas. We lost our coal. I watched the trains haul coal from the west to the east every day. We didn't get to vote on that. And I believe, in my opinion, the only responsible accounting that we have as people of this city is when we vote to elect the people here, as it was done before. That was the way it was. The council run. The mayor was one that run. We didn't have to have a city administrator. I've lived here my entire life, and so I have run the gamut of everything. But we need to have things for everyone, not just a few select, not just to pick out a few people that get a $90,000 nonprofit grant. This is wrong. I'm not moving. I'm staying here, but I am on a very, very limited income. So thank you once again for your time and your consideration.
Hello, Jim Shaw, 522 North 2nd Street. I've complained about streets numerous times to my councilman. I said, because 2nd Street, if you drive from Main Street to north 3 or 4 or 5 blocks, it's terrible. You know, and I'll call him, I said, when are you going to fix it? Not this year, Jim, not this year. I cuss streets every day. Okay, riding the motorcycle down the streets likes to shake the front end out of my bike. So I sold the bike to Indianola Harley Davidson. So went down there to deliver it. Kathy followed me down and gave me a ride back. Damn, their streets are good. Just marveled at their streets. So I come back and that was not a fair assessment, okay? It was on the main drag. You know, naturally it's going to look good. So I took another whole day of riding. As I'm going down, I'm going to ride through all of Indianola, and I'm going to look at their back streets to find the ones that look like mine. They don't have any. So, yeah, I'm concerned about the streets, but, you know, most of the bad streets are from down on Madison Street this way. You know, that way they're not. Okay? Oh, there's some streets there, but not like the ones up here. On the north side, they're terrible. But I'm against any increase to have me pay for it. Thanks.
Mic is still open. No one's standing up, so let's go on to staff review on this one.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so the same comments. This would be for the Interstate Power and Light Company for the electric utility for a 5%.
Thank you. Council comments?
Your Honor, I'll just make two. Being fiscally responsive doesn't necessarily mean budget cuts. It also means smart investments. And in my opinion, that's part of what this is. And just a point of reference, Indianola, those nice streets, they have a 5% franchise fee.
Any other council comments?
Your Honor, I just want to make the point that we're doing nothing novel. I believe there's just short of 200 municipalities that have franchise fees. So they're all over the state.
Anyone else?
Your Honor, can you hear me?
I can. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment about the approval of $90,000 to a nonprofit. The reason that I'm in discussion with other council members, others as well, support those dollars isn't just about our belief in a nonprofit organization on Main Street. It's the understanding that nonprofit has allowed for us to access over $1 million that would have otherwise not been directed to our rebuild efforts. And therefore, I consider it just a valuable investment with a really, really strong return for our community. And sometimes the council has those opportunities. And when we have the opportunity to review those, I'm proud of the steps moving forward in accepting those free dollars. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll declare the public hearing is closed at 6:54 PM and call for a motion to approve.
So moved, Your Honor.
Motion to approve, Your Honor.
I'll
Thank you.
second Jeff then.
All right, Snyder motion, Isom second. Roll call.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
Yes.
Very good, that carried as well. On to the next item.
Public hearing and ordinance 15066 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by amending the Table of Special Ordinances, Table 1 franchise by establishing a franchise agreement with Consumers Energy Cooperative for an electric utility franchise. First reading.
Is there a motion to approve that ordinance?
Public hearing, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm one ahead. Thank you. I'll declare the public hearing is open at 6:55 PM. Did the clerk receive any written comments?
No, Your Honor.
And time for public comments. And then time for staff review.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is for Consumers Energy Cooperative for electric utility franchise for a 5% fee.
Thank you. Time for council comments. Hearing none, let's close the public hearing at 6:56 PM and call for a motion to approve the ordinance.
Move for approval.
Thank you.
Second, Your Honor.
Roll call.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Very good, that carried. Now on to the one that I thought we were on. What's that, ordinance 15067?
Ordinance 15067 to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Marshalltown, Iowa by amending 53.022 stormwater billing and collection. First reading.
Move for approval.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
The discussion.
Yes, Your Honor. So this amendment is going to authorize the Marshalltown Waterworks to complete the collection processes on unpaid storm sewer only accounts. Currently, our code reads that the city clerk is the only one authorized to do this. However, the Waterworks is the one who manages these accounts. Waterworks staff actually contacted me this morning, and they want to make one more change to the language. So I'm going to ask that you do not pass this amendment tonight, and I will bring forward a revised amendment to the June 26th meeting.
The motion's on the floor for discussion by the council first, though. How about discussion by the public on this one? I'm expecting a pretty quick roll call.
Hoop,
No.
Isom,
No.
Kell,
No.
Lottie Hoff,
No.
Schneider,
No.
Thompson,
No.
Walker,
No.
Every once in a while I get it right. That did not carry, it failed. On to the next one.
we'll pass that tonight. That was the motion to waive the second and third reading of that ordinance, so that will no longer
Oh,
be
yeah,
needed
yeah.
tonight.
Very good, okay, good. Then we go to the discussion items. K, first one of which is the city administrator hiring process. Anyone like to take that one on?
Jill Petermeyer, Human Resources. So as you know, we did a side-by-side process for city administrator recruitment. We sourced applicants, and while we were waiting for the RFPs to be submitted to see which route you wanted to go, we received 13 resumes and 3 RFPs. So I'm here tonight to see which direction you want to go, if you would like to interview some of the applicants that the city received, or if you want to go with one of the 3 RFP companies.
Okay. Floor is open for council comment on that one.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I guess I'll go first. I feel like we have some potential candidates. I don't feel like I personally feel like we have the pool that we need to, so it's a matter of how others feel, but I'm of the opinion that if we feel confident, generally speaking, in the pool we have of candidates out of the 13, that we have 3 to move forward with, that we proceed with the Henson Consulting as part of our process. Otherwise, I'm of the opinion we take the ones we have and we additionally bring GovHR into it. I think kind of our previous history when doing business with them and some of the what's included in their offerings from a service perspective align well if we want to widen the net per se as far as a candidate pool. So I guess the only one I probably exclude GPS, at least upon my review and what they bring to the table, regardless of the other 2.
Thank you. Other council?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Yeah, directionally aligned with a lot of what Gabe said. This just boils down to, we know the importance of this role and we know the importance of getting it right. And having experts walk beside us throughout this process, I think allows for the greatest chance of us being successful. This is, other cities are setting precedent for us in terms of pay, which we've done a wage study. We know where we are there, as well as tenure in that first contract. So this is a big decision that impacts the city for years to come, and that's without really knowing who that individual is. So not that hiring a consultant makes that foolproof. I think it just adds another layer of scrutiny and expertise that, frankly, I don't think the 7 of us have. And Jill's plenty busy already. So I would lean towards GovHR as well. I think they're the most equipped to handle this efficiently and correctly. There's some guarantees built into that contract too. And then obviously we contracted with them for our wage study. So they're already familiar with our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Other councilors wish to comment?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
I take a different approach to this. I see 13 people that were actively looking for a position in a community like ours. They took the time to find the opening, took the time to write a cover letter and send their resume to us. And in looking through those, I think that there are 3 or 4 people that I would like to interview. And I think there are some drawbacks to working with headhunters that I question the people they will find what their true agenda really is, because if they really wanted to come to Marshalltown, they would have found the opening and applied like the other 13 people. So I'm taking an opposite position. I think we've got candidates that want to live and want to work in Marshalltown. Let's talk to them. Thank you, Your Honor.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Your Honor, I have a question.
You do.
Jill, do you see value added at using a headhunter?
They're going to do cold calls to people who are working and not actively looking to sell our community, sell our position to them. So you do get a different set of applicants that a headhunter can bring in.
Thank you.
Anyone else up there? Or on the phone? Let's open it up to the public before we call for any indication of staff direction. Public comments open.
Linda Clark, 306 South Second Avenue. Having lived here my entire life, I remember the time we didn't have a city administrator. We didn't get a choice to vote saying we even needed to have one. I remember the time when we had the mayor and the city council that run this town very well. I didn't have a problem. Now we have a city attorney that doesn't even live in the city. We have city administrator that's on an intern thing. We have talk about headhunters to call and do cold calling to get people to come to Marshalltown. And yet we only are a population of 27,000 and we have very little income in this town anymore. And the council doesn't seem to be remembering that. I remember when we had very talented mayors that ran this city along with the council, and we elected them all. And that was the way I liked it, but I am told I am in the past. Well, I'm still living here and I'm not moving away. And I'm going to very much miss Chief Ryerson when he retires April 1st.
Other public comment? Anybody wish to make a motion to give staff direction about how to proceed given the two main choices?
I guess, Your Honor, I'll make a motion just based off of the recommendation from staff that we proceed forward with GovHR.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Let's call the roll.
Thompson?
No.
Walker? We just lost him.
It looks like he dropped out of the meeting, or got disconnected or something right before that.
Okay, thanks. Hoop?
Yes.
Isom?
Yes.
Kell?
Yes.
Lottie
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Okay, that carried as well. Thank you. And then final discussion item tonight is downtown implementation of the plan for East Main Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Heather Thomas, Public Works. I'm going to have Greg with Bolton and Mink help tag team this item for us as we go through this. And I'm going to go ahead and open some of the attachments that are on the agenda. We'll probably flip back and forth, so if there's anything you want me to pull up as we're talking, please do let me know. First of all, I just wanted to remind everybody this is the East Main Street project. It's phase 2 of the downtown master plan, the implementation plan. This project is on East Main Street from Center Street to 3rd Ave, and then Center Street from Church to State, so it's 5 blocks. Right now, we're at a 30% level. So I'll do costs first, and then we'll get into some of the schematics. The 30% construction cost estimate is just about $7.6 million. I've thrown in a 10% placeholder for engineering during construction, what puts a total project cost above and beyond the existing design contract about $8.35 million. Of that, replacement of water main is a portion of that, and that contribution would come from Marshalltown Waterworks as part of their water utility. So we're looking at right now a 30% cost level of the city needing to bring about $7.3 million to the table to get this constructed. As far as where we are at for ability to pay for this project, in January there was a presentation of where we're at for GO bonding. And at that time, it's estimated the city has $9.8 million available this fall for a GO bond. As far as timeline on this project, if this were to proceed in the quickest manner possible, that would be a bid letting of this winter. Due to materials and the time that it takes to get a contractor in place, in addition to the wrapping up of the State Street project, the earliest construction would be probably late summer or fall of 2024. If we experience the same type of lead times that we did on materials for State Street, we actually had a 52-week lead time on part of the utilities there, so that would push it not till spring of 2025 for construction, and at this point I don't have a good answer on that, on how lengthy that lead time may be. So I mentioned we're at a 30% level, so what does that mean? We've kind of done the investigation to try to identify those unknowns. So we've completed the survey, the environmental review, the geotech investigation. We've started to have the communication with property owners to understand what they have for basements and vaults that may extend into our right-of-way that we're going to have to deal with. We've had some communication with Marshall County. They're a prominent landowner with the courthouse being in part of this project, 2 blocks of the 5 blocks, to understand kind of what relationship we have there, what opportunities we have there as well. We've kind of had some discussion with utility companies, the private ones, as far as telecommunication lines and those things, what improvements they need to be doing or want to be doing in conjunction with this project, and letting them know that it is on our radar. We've also evaluated what we call geometrics. So that's a space available within the street right-of-way to accommodate such things as vehicular transportation, sidewalks for pedestrians, parking, bike lanes, buffer areas as well. So like I said, we're kind of at that 30% level. We have a rough idea of what is needed for stormwater infrastructure that the city would be responsible for, in addition to water main along the route. This water main, again, is that 100-year-old vintage that would like to get replaced fully from this project. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a couple of schematics. Okay. And so as we go through this, there are several items that I'd like some direction or concurrence from council members on to make sure we're headed in the right path given the 30% level that we're at. I'm going to go ahead and ask that we discuss each item as we go through this, but hold off maybe until the end to provide that final direction to city staff. Just because of the order of things, it may kind of sway your decision and direction to staff with some of the later items to discuss. Up in front of you is, again, just a schematic. These are the 5 blocks that we're talking about. And this is based on the outcomes of that downtown implementation plan and the objectives of that. The design features, amenities, streetscape amenities are going to be an extension from State Street. So that's kind of what's shown in these concepts. Doesn't mean we have to do the same thing. It's just an extension to show you what possibilities there are. Oops. Well, Main Street right now, we have parallel parking on both sides, a bike lane, and 2 travel lanes. The proposed is to put angle parking on the south side of the road, parallel on the north side, and remove the bike lanes. Center Street, there's 2 blocks of Center Street. One that's north of Center Street right now. We have parallel parking both sides, 2 travel lines, and a loading zone in the middle. It is proposed right now to go to parallel parking on both sides, 2 travel lanes, and have a bike lane in that section. South of Main Street, again, loading zone in the middle, parallel parking both sides. It is proposed to go parallel on the west side of Center Street and angle on the east side. This right here is just kind of a schematic looking down Main Street of what that kind of looks like. Again, parallel on the north side, angle parking on the south side. So that is going to segue us into the first discussion item of angle parking. I'm going to go ahead and invite Greg up here to go ahead and give an introduction of what we're asking for tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. So the first discussion, when we had a meeting earlier this year, where it was the joint meeting between the city and the county, Gary brought up a great question, and specifically in regards to looking at the west side of the courthouse. At the display at that time, we had showed parallel parking. Gary brought up the potential option of adding those to angle parking. As we looked at that, we talked with the county. The county's good with it. They like the idea. It gets us more parking stalls. But given the layout right now, where I'm going to go back to this option. So if we have angle parking and a bike lane, as we started to look at adding those angles in, that starts to create a safety issue for us that we see. So as you get that bicyclist that may be headed north in the bike lanes and somebody backing out of a parking stall, that creates a zone where they can't necessarily see that biker, creates a conflict point. So we started looking at what are other options or alternatives there. And so what I want to talk through tonight is the potential of doing back in angle parking. We did talk about this with our stakeholders meeting that we had in April. Of the group that we talked to at that point, there were about 20 people in the room. They were different business owners. I think there were some council members there, and kind of polled them. And of that polling, 90% said we should at least continue this discussion. So that's kind of what I want to talk through tonight and kind of show you what is back end angle parking and then answer any questions that it is as well. So essentially it's just like front end angle parking, but you're going to be, instead of when you get done parking, you won't be facing the curb, you'll actually be facing out towards the street. So the way we do it, the sign, if you look at the blue, it's kind of very similar to parallel parking. If you think of half the moves of parallel, you're going to stop, your stall is behind you, you're going to signal your intention to go right, just like you would with a parallel parking stall. And then you're going to back into your stall. Once you get angled, you're done. You're just not going to pull parallel with that curb. There are several benefits of back-end angle parking as we look at it. So especially with the downtown, people are going to be buying stuff. You're going to be trying to draw visitors in. One, your trunk or your bed of your pickup is now at the back of curb. You can easily load that vehicle without having to go out in the street. One of the other benefits is if you have small kids, when you open your doors, it naturally creates a blocking point so that way the kids naturally go to the sidewalk and not out into the traffic like they would with normal angular parking. And then it also removes that conflict point with those bicyclists that we really saw with the normal head-in parking. It is something new. There are some states, or not some states, there are some cities in Iowa that are doing it. The city of Des Moines has it downtown. They've been very successful with it. We've done it in the city of Muscatine as well. Be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions up here? Go ahead.
What other cities are doing this back in diagonal parking?
So Des Moines does it. They've got it. If you look at a lot of their bridges that go from like downtown to the East Village, it's on a lot of their bridges. And then they've got it in other areas throughout the East Village as well.
If I remember right at the last meeting, one city out east decided to just try it
So
a little bit,
yeah,
and then they went, this is better than sliced bread. You know?
So that kind of gets to one of Heather's potentials here, of a test block. And we've done that before. We worked with the city of Muscatine. They've got a very vibrant downtown right next to the riverfront, and they were looking at other options other than parallel because they have a bike lane too. And so we said, okay, because there was a lot of questions, people for it and people against it. And they had a nice little side street in their downtown that we went, let's just test it. Let's paint it. All it is paint. Take out the existing marking, change them to go the other direction, and do a test block. And kind of what we talked about when we did that was how do we evaluate whether it's successful or not successful? Because that's one of the questions. If you do a test block, how do you know what the result of it is? So first thing we did was a lot of community outreach because it's new. Get on social media, talk to them about what it is. We've got signs, we've got some nice videos that we can help the city with to inform the public about what it is, and then do that test block and just monitor to see how it's used. The first week, you probably won't see a lot of people doing it, a couple people trying it, but the more and more people that try it, the more and more people like it. If you can parallel park, you can definitely back and angle park. But it also helps those that maybe struggle with with parallel parking because it's only half the movement. They can back in, and especially with most of the newer vehicles today, with all the backup cameras, it makes it really easy to be able to see as you're backing in there. So a test block could be a good option to see, is this something that the city likes or doesn't like? What's the use? The test block that we potentially looked at would be the east side of the courthouse on First Ave. We thought that would be, it's a little bit wider street, a little bit of extra room to maneuver, get people used to it.
We actually did the testing along one block here in town, just west of the Coliseum. when we tried angled parking there, that, then we went back to
Yep.
straight parking. But I'm assuming that street's narrower than what we're talking about?
Yes, it is.
Adjacent to the courthouse?
Yep. Yep. The courthouse on the east side already has angled parking, so it just would be a matter of rotating that. Any other questions on that one? Though,
The only comment, does it delay timeline at all by doing a test block versus another? Is there a downside to that versus moving forward with one decision or another?
as far as the design goes, because at the end of the blocks, it's really just a matter of rotating the angles. It doesn't really change any of the design. If you look at the end of the blocks, we've got nice angles coming in because we're really designing the ends of the blocks for snowplows. And so whether it's a front end or back end, the geometrics doesn't change. It should be a last moment change on the marking plan. So it really shouldn't affect the timing of the project. The other thing to think through is the location of, what did I do? Sorry. Of where the back end angle parking would be. So in the current project, one of the things that we would recommend is if you're going to embrace it, fully embrace it, because you don't want to have confusion in the downtown. You don't want to have one block that's one way, one block that's the other way. So with our current project, we would recommend that angle parking on the west side of the courthouse and then all along the south side of Main Street in our project limits. And then if you look at the downtown implementation plan and kind of wherever the downtown implementation plan made recommendations for angled parking, we would look at doing that same back and angled parking in those locations, which are the blue blocks shown on here. So all of Main Street, all around the square for the courthouse, and then I think that we could have conversations on the other pieces that are one block outside of downtown. You're starting to have, we could definitely do it there. We show the value for it. Or if there's a lot of, say, we're getting one block out of downtown, we want to go back to normal. I think there's the availability to look at that too. But definitely all of Main Street and all around the courthouse, we would recommend if you're going to go to back end, do it all in those areas.
Yeah,
Your Honor?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'd say if we're in for a penny, we're in for a pound. We should do back and angle parking everywhere we have it. I've used it in the wild. It's only confusing the very first time you see it anywhere. After that, that's what you hope they all are. It really is better.
And so part of the other discussion that eventually we'll get to for the next item with the bike lanes, if we end up moving bike lanes, it may change some of this conversation and remove some of that safety point. So that's one of those. Let's get through the next item too, because that may adjust some of the thoughts on this one.
Hey, did you?
Yeah, just,
wanna add
well, I guess
something?
one comment,
Yeah.
one question. Just from a safety perspective, number of customer sites I go to, back-end parking only, regardless of the angle or not, just due to the safety implications from a risk mitigation on hazards. And I guess my comment is, what does it do from an increased perspective in angle parking where we don't have? How many spots are we adding? Is that 10% addition of parking spots or 15, or what does that look like?
So forward angle and parking on Main Street and reverse back end parking would be the same number of stalls for that one block that we're talking about on the west side of the courthouse. If we're comparing parallel parking and angled parking, it's an increase of 6 stalls.
But the last time we studied it, it wasn't anywhere close to that kind of a gain of parking spaces. About 7, 8 years ago. Wow, okay. And just to make everybody honked off at me, roundabouts have about the same thing. Everybody hates them until they've gotten used to them. If you talk to the people in Fort Dodge and Cedar Rapids and other places where they've become popular.
Yep.
Anybody else up here? Should we open it, want to finish on this topic, or should we open up to the public comment before we go to the next part?
I guess that's up to the council, whether you want to go through all of them and then do public comment or do public comment for each item.
Let's have you finish, we'll have the council comment and then open up to the public.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. So just a recap of that conversation. At the end of this discussion, we'll ask you guys for some input on this item. The options on the table is to stick with front-end angled parking, to consider a test block, or to go ahead and switch to back-end angled parking at this time. As far as cost impacts go, I don't feel that there is a significant cost impact to either of those decisions at this time. Just some minor signage. So next I'm going to go and discuss bike lanes. And so bike lanes were proposed with the downtown implementation plan to be located on Main Street, on Center Street. And this was the circulation path downtown. We had a request recently at the stakeholder meeting to reevaluate the presence of bike lanes on Center Street and what possibilities there were to remove them from Center Street. So this is where that concept came from, and that's why it was included in this project. And we have gone ahead and evaluated a potential alternative to the bike lanes on Center Street. I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to Greg again to go ahead and discuss that.
Thanks, Heather. So you can see the layout that what was originally the downtown implementation plan. So what that did, that grabbed bicycle traffic at 3rd. They would go north until they went to Nevada, go east-west on Nevada until Center, and then go north. So what we looked at was, we came up with kind of 2 different alternatives, looking at how do we potentially reroute those bikes and what those cons and what those pros and benefits are, and what some of the cons are as well. First tab, there we go. So the first option we looked at would be very similar to the implementation plan, just a little bit of adjustments based on traffic flow. Kind of a good thing to look at that we look, that we looked at was looking at kind of this diagram of how do we decide what goes where and how bicycles maneuver. So really looking at the speed and the amount of traffic there is. If we're 25 miles an hour or less, we're really in that top category. If we're less than 3,000 cars per day, then what we would recommend is that it's safe and a recommended practice to share that road. So bicycles and cars will share a lane together. If you're more than 3,000 vehicles a day, that's when we really look to be that striped bike lane, which is what Center is recommending based on its flows. And then there's some other options if you get into higher speeds as well. But our roads that we have been looking at are all within the downtown district or in residential areas, so we are that lower speed. So the first option that we looked at was maintaining those bikes on Center Street and then coming down to Boone and then utilizing 2nd Street and Boone as a shared bike route with the vehicles. As we looked at the traffic on Nevada and just kind of that gets bicycles a little bit more in a slower vehicle routing area. The second option we looked at was if we wanted to completely remove the bicycle lanes from Center Street and kind of what makes the most sense. And as we looked at those routes and those options, going to put your bike route completely on street on 2nd, so you're going to share the bike lane and the bike lane and the vehicles all the way up 2nd, and that would be one straight shot. Just for reference, your daily traffic is about 1,100 vehicles per day. That was measured in 2017 by the DOT for this stretch of roadway. They would come all the way down to Madison and then jog over to Wilson Circle, and then the ability to tie into the existing trail system. The benefit of this one is that we've got lower volume roads. Your bikes are going to be on a straight path. We're not asking them to make turns or 90 degrees. And then it gives us the potential to discuss what we want to do on Center Street with an additional 10 feet. We could make those sidewalks a little wider. We could stick with regular angle parking rather than back in because that conflict is potentially disappears. So just some options that we'd like is some guidance from council as far as what they would like to see on this one. Any questions on these guys?
Questions or comments up here?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd really like to thank you guys for looking at options there. I really like option B. I like the straight shot. I think it's just an overall safer route, and the Sharrows are good.
Thanks, Joe. People may not know that you're the president of Trails Inc., so you have kind of a nonprofit group that's trying to get that 34-mile trail all the way up to Steamboat, so that includes a lot of bicycle enthusiasts.
Yep.
I happen to have an office on this path, Plan B, and because of the Y connection, I see an awful lot of bike traffic on it, and it's a much less traveled
Yep.
street than Center.
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't feel safe myself biking on Center Street. Lots of people, including some good friends of ours, are on Second Street all the time, really. But that's my biking perspective. Anybody else up here, though? Well,
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. So just a recap of that, the decision right now is going to be to stick with bike lanes on Center Street or proceed to go ahead and move them to Second Street, that we'll be asking for. If we do move them to Second Street, that will require a change with the current contract we have with Construct on State Street. Right now, we have pavement markings in there to allow for the bike lanes proposed on Center Street to tie into State Street. We would go ahead and move that over to Second Street at this time with this current project, so they're working together. I also did have a conversation with our street division. They're actually setting up our new street pavement marking machine. So if this is the direction council wants to go, moving them to Second Street, I'm going to go ahead and make that recommendation that I make those changes from a pavement marking standpoint from Center over to Second Street this year. There's no reason not to go ahead and proceed with that direction.
and the difference is the dotted or solid line on Center versus the Sharrows on Second
Right.
Street. And Sharrows is a new term to some people.
Yep, so what a sharrow is if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of this picture, periodically on the street, you'll see an image of a bike and an angle arrow direction as well.
I see my wife's vehicle and mine there. We must have been working that day. Okay. Probably cheaper for the Sharrows, right?
At this time, as far as cost impacts of these options, whether we're doing pavement markings on Center Street or pavement markings on Second Street, I think they're probably a relatively equal cost. However, that does open up some possibilities on Center Street to move the curb lines in or possibly reconfigure that a little bit, and there could be some potential cost savings with that option.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
next item for discussion, we're going to talk about downtown street lighting for this next phase. I have a couple of pictures up right now of our existing street lighting. We currently have street lighting that have several different features and attachments to those poles. We currently have flower baskets, flags, wreaths, banners, and Christmas lights, all that are attached to these at different times of the year. So the conversation is going to be whether we are going to relocate the existing streetlights we have. With the change in moving from 48 to 51 foot from curb to curb, we do need to relocate those foundations or install new lighting. And at this time, I'll go ahead and bring Greg back up for some additional discussion.
Yeah, so kind of the decision at this point is several different items of one, do we want to get new lighting? You've got the ability as you're really doing this once in a very long time project for Main Street. We don't want to 4 years down the road go, man, I really wish we would have done that or replace that. So lighting is one of those that you can make a big statement with. You could use a historic light like you have today, or you could go to something very, very different. There's lots of options there. We do understand the importance for the flags, the wreaths, the banners, the Christmas lights. All of those can be incorporated in any new light that we do. One of the conversations we'll have a little later is about those flyer baskets. With some of the other landscaping we're proposing with the project, the MCBD is okay with removing those flower baskets as long as we maintain other landscaping. That makes that maintenance a little bit easier too, because then you don't have that hanging item to get to. One of the things that we would look at, no matter which option we do, as we start to look at and do the photometrics. So what that means is looking at how the light shines out of the existing lights. there is going to be obviously some natural dark areas just because of the existing light pattern. We would supplement those with some pedestrian scale lighting, make sure our sidewalks are always lit. They look, they feel safe. We're keeping those so people can always see. And then if we do new street lights, we'd probably supplement with some new pedestrian scale lighting in certain areas. Maybe it's a plaza area where we expect people could be sitting or gathering as of an evening to really light those areas up. Any questions on the lights?
I'll just make one comment. So long as the flower beds get the attention that the flower baskets get, if we're going to continue in some type of program of such, I'm all for a transition of that. That being said, our flower beds have never looked glorious downtown. Our flower baskets always do, and they're phenomenal, and they highlight a lot of good things with what our downtown is. So that's my only comment, caution, or otherwise. I don't want to lose what I think is a treasure downtown, as small as it is.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like just to echo what Gabe is saying, because I know when I go to seek feedback and visit with folks, the first compliment is our downtown city lights and the memorials / flower exhibits that accompany them. I don't know what the current condition of the lights are, but I understand what Councilman Nyson is saying in regards to, hey, if we have a feature that's different but equally maintained, great. I just don't know that replacing them, if they're in good condition and they already have such a high opinion from people in the community, I think, unless I hear differently, keeping those and then supplementing them with additional lights sounds like a pretty neat option or opportunity.
I got one question, I guess, in addition to that. So if we do the new lights, I guess maybe let me start with the question by, what is our assumption of moving the old lights and what we'll have to replace in the transition based off current conditions?
Yep. So the new lights, obviously, the goal would be what they do is they take the pole down. We're going to put a new base, and then we're going to run new conduit, because during construction, with where those are, we're not going to be able to save that conduit and the wire running between them. So we're going to assume that we're going to have to rerun pieces of that to be able to make those connection points. So there is some concern just from the construction side of taking all those poles down. Where do you store those? How do you keep them from getting damaged? And then as far as to answer one of Dex's questions too, as far as the light quality, yes, all of these have been upgraded to, I believe they've all been upgraded to LED lights. But as you get to new light fixtures, they're going to spread that light a little differently and more evenly, just with newer technology. So we would get a better light distribution with a new light, but we definitely can make the existing lights work and function if that's something the council wants to do. We can really go either way.
So maybe we have a 0% worry that any of the existing lights will
I guess you will probably know more about the maintenance, Heather.
have to be replaced during deconstruction, reconstruction.
So we've had the opportunity with a couple of the buildings that have been demolished on Main Street that we've had city staff go out and remove a pole, store it temporarily, and then put it back up when that demolition has been done. Knock on wood, so far, we've not had any casualties in that effort. We have had a couple of cases where a streetlight's been hit by a vehicle and needed to do repair and stuff. These lights and this style is no longer a currently produced style. However, we do have a fair amount of number of these not only owned by the city, but also I think Emerson has a very similar style. The old hospital site has a similar style. So if this was the direction we were headed, where we're going to continue with this style, we would potentially look at making sure that we're holding on to some spares in the case that we need.
And one final question while you're still up there. So say we decide to move to new. Do we got any recoup costs in getting rid of the old and selling them somewhere, or somebody who's interested in old lights or otherwise? Or I'm assuming we probably haven't looked at that route since they're still functional and working, I guess, if we... rather than scrapping.
Right. I've not evaluated the potential resale on something like this. I assume there's other communities with the same style, and there may be a small market there if they wanted to boost their stock since they're out of production now as well.
Any more questions on this one?
Okay, to summarize that discussion, we have 31 streetlights in these 5 blocks. The cost of relocating what we have existing and supplementing with approximately 11 pedestrian lights is about $437,000. If we were to upgrade those and replace the 31 streetlights and still do those 11 pedestrian, we're at $771,000. So that's a difference of about $335,000. Of the number that I shared at the very beginning with the cost of the entire project, I included that larger number. So if we're talking about reusing the existing, you can reduce that number by $335,000. So we'll be looking for direction tonight whether to go ahead and utilize the existing streetlights and just relocate them, or go with new. And then any comments you guys would like to add about what attachments stay on the poles if we get new ones, and those kind of comments.
Your Honor, can I ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Sorry. Specific to the timing on the decision, is that born out of the expected lead times for the new light structures? Because it wouldn't change the location, would it?
So we do look at the photometrics, and depending on what kind of style, they may have a slightly different photometric, but I would say there'd be relatively minimal design differences if this decision would be delayed a little bit.
And then the second question, can you just remind us where the discussion on this lighting came from? Was it based on stakeholder feedback? Was it based on the survey? Or is this just risk mitigation at this point?
Yeah, so one of the outcomes of the downtown implementation plan was better lighting. It wasn't necessarily spelled out on how to do that or what the recommendation was. The cost estimate of the downtown implementation plan did just relocate these existing and add supplement. As we had conversations with stakeholders, as we had conversations with MCBD, and the question was raised, hey, if you guys are relocating them, why don't you replace them for something new, something brighter, something that they feel is safer to have more light. So we just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that those discussions and comments have been happening. Instead of me getting direction from 1 or 2 council members that yes, I'd like to replace the lights, I just wanted to make sure collectively as a whole we were getting the same consensus. Okay, the next item is just more of a comment, and I'm hoping that the concurrence in this is to proceed as we are today. The vegetation in the berms right now that we have them at the intersections only. Along Main Street, MCBD is the responsible party for maintaining those. It has been a struggle, as many have mentioned, on the maintenance of them, not only for the volunteer labor to keep them weeded, but also the small minimal cost of replacing plants and mulch every year. Those have been a challenge. In discussion with MCBD, if we do go the route of removing the flower baskets from the poles, they are potentially considering an opportunity to rebrand their flower basket program. Instead of fundraising for flower baskets, they would fundraise for Main Street plants, vegetation, and those types of things. And if successful, their intent would be to hire a single person or company that would be responsible summer long for those landscape beds. They were supportive of that. If you guys are supportive, we would like to continue that relationship with MCBD where they're the responsible parties. They also mentioned that they do and are in favor of one of the design concepts where we're going to put planter curbs around the berms. That kind of helps contain the mulch and the plants, also prevents some of the salt from potentially going in and killing plants. So with this item, again, we're just hoping for that concurrence that you'd like to maintain that relationship with MCBD for maintaining the Main Street planters. Okay, next item that will go on for discussion is related to outdoor dining spaces. We've had comments not only from stakeholders and MCBD that there is an interest to provide vibrancy outside of businesses downtown. I'll go ahead and turn this one over to Greg to further discuss.
Thanks, Heather. So yeah, like Heather was saying, through several of the stakeholder groups, we met with several of the businesses along the corridor that expressed interest in having some sort of a outdoor dining space to be able to supplement or really bring additional benefit to their business. So we started looking at where those make sense, and there's a couple thought processes as you look at this. There is the first thought process of, okay, how do we do that for an individual business? With the current sidewalk width, we have about 14 and a half foot from the back of curb to the face of the building. If we start to think about what do I need in that 14 and a half foot, if we say the first 2 foot adjacent to the building are really, nobody really walks there, it's kind of because you just don't feel comfortable walking that close to a building. And then you've got 6 foot for your minimum pedestrian way. So there's 8 foot. So now we've got the difference left there, that we've got the ability to do some sort of outdoor seating. You end up with usually a cafe style table and some chairs with it. Now, our thought process as we looked at that was, let me go back to, I'll take, for example, there we go. We've got kind of 2 options. I just went down to tannins. We met with them. So one option is you could kind of put your parklet, your table and your chairs kind of here in this blue space, and then you get your kind of your red dash lines or your pedestrian way that go around it. We could also potentially look at flipping that, where you put the table and the chairs out by the curb. That can get sometimes a little interesting just based on vehicle traffic backing into stuff. You don't want to make sure nobody pulls into any of that stuff. The other option is you could look at doing kind of what we're calling a parklet. So it could be a temporary outdoor seating area, which would kind of be this orange right here. So we've done them in several communities. It's something where you could, the business could come in and rent 3 parking stalls for the summer, and they build a temporary structure out in the roadway where they can do seating, and then at the end of the year they take that down so it doesn't impact your snow removal. The other potential option is that if you can identify key locations throughout the corridor that you want to really promote this, we could look at actually changing the street design. We could reduce parking. We could take one end of the block and expand that bump out area to make it bigger for some of those seating areas. The one concern that we always try to talk about and understand is as much as we would love every business to stay forever, we know businesses kind of come and go. So if you change a street design and remove parking stalls and actually move your curb lines for one business right now, if 10 years down the road that business leaves or relocates, they've grown, they have to get bigger, they have to relocate. Now what do you do with that space? Does that new owner want that? So there's some options here as far as how we proceed. As we looked at the abilities, kind of the first option would be kind of doing adding the small area adjacent to the building where you could have a cafe table. The other option is we just do the street design kind of as it's shown, and then the city can work through and figure out how to do kind of these parklets where somebody could rent parking stalls. That process doesn't have to be decided by any means right now. That could be later on in the future. That would not delay the project at all. Other option would be to, for example, this would be Zamora's. At the corner here, there's some kind of a natural spot that we could put some tables. Or you could go out into this orange out here and you could put another parklet, or we could potentially expand the curb in there to provide more areas kind of at the ends of the blocks. We don't really want to do that at the mid blocks and add any curb returns or anything like that, because that makes the maintenance side for Heather and her public works staff would be very frustrated with that during snow removal. So definitely want to, if we're going to make any curb changes, do those on the ends of the blocks. Otherwise, look at kind of doing some parklet options. Questions? As far as impacts to budget, it really kind of comes upon the direction. If we're going to be moving curbs, that'll obviously change some cost as we move those curbs. You'll have some less street paving, but then more amenity space paving if we end up putting pavers in there or what that looks like. If you were to choose between doing the cafe style tables, the small ones, or the parklet ones, those really aren't, neither one of those are a big cost impact to the project.
I would be opposed to doing permanent bump outs for businesses. I think, businesses do move, they close, restaurants do. And as far, the other options we keep, I think we can do the same thing with that.
And we've got several communities in Iowa we can give references for that do that, the ability to build that out in the summertime, and then it comes down, so that way you can do your snow removal.
Getting my weekly ice cream cone today, I was on 13th Street, and I noticed that at least 2, and I think maybe 3 establishments did have small outdoor seating and table things, and it really does make it look more alive.
Yep.
And they all fit close enough to the stores that there was still walking traffic going by without any trouble.
The one thing, if we do end up wanting to, if we do look at doing the smaller, the smaller cafe style tables, that's one thing just to know it's kind of an option, because we'll address our landscaping and our street design, streetscape right there to make sure that if we had a landscape bed, we'll pull that back, kind of those potential locations. That would be one thing too, is if that's something we want to do to kind of target where those would be, because that will affect kind of where we put different streetscape related items to make sure that we still maintain that ADA path around them as well.
So just to make sure I heard you correctly, option B to a certain extent is permanent based off of what we would decide today.
Yeah, it would. You'd be able to see some visual differences. We may not have some of the scheme that jumps down the block.
Anyone else up here? Okay.
Okay, to recap that, there's 3 options on the table. One is to proceed with the design as it is today with curbs where they're located, and allow for the potential for future discussion about some type of a parklet option. Obviously, that's a very controversial, potentially, discussion as well, because you are eliminating parking for the ability to have outdoor service. So that's a topic for another day, does not need to be discussed further and decided today exactly the intricacies of what that program may look like. That is option A. Option B would be to adjust the streetscape amenities, such as where the streetlights are located, where the poles are located, where the landscape beds are located, to allow for that 4.5-foot piece right along the building facade. Option 7 would be to go ahead and build permanently based on the businesses that are there today for those that are desiring outdoor seating. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. The next item is a discussion item related to how to accommodate some challenges that we've determined with our preliminary 30% investigation and working with the adjacent property owners as it relates to when they have a vault that extends their basement underneath the existing sidewalk that's there today. We also have one property owner that has exterior basement stairs also located in the right-of-way. So I'll go ahead and turn this one over to Greg.
It's very interesting when you do basement inspections, what you find. You never know what you're going to find, and we saw the gamut as we were doing all of the downtown buildings. So what we did, we met with every property owner, and we took a tour. We said, what's in your basement today? Because we want to make sure we understand, one, what's the condition of their exterior walls? We're going to be doing construction. We want to be making sure we understand if they have any structural issues. We're aware of it ahead of time. We're looking for utilities, where utilities come into that wall, so we can make sure we're planning for that with the design. And then one of the other things, as we're into downtown, we look for vaults. And a lot of times, what a vault is, for those who don't know, is an actual part of the building that extends underneath the sidewalk. So if you find your building face and then you keep going out, they've actually got the basement extends out into the right-of-way. And so the vault top, if you were to look up, it looks like a concrete slab, and then on top it's actually the sidewalk. So essentially a good explanation is they build essentially a mini bridge to bridge over that to span that gap. There's different ways to deal with those when we find them. We found 5 of them along the corridor that have very large vaults out under the right-of-way. There's several of them that have nothing in them. There's others that have full fire suppression, all their fire pumps, all their sprinkler piping, all is actually in that vault, which is in the right-of-way. So that starts to lead with kind of some, how do we deal with this? What does this look like to go forward? And really asking the council to give us some direction as far as how do we be consistent with all the property owners now that we know what's there, and how do we proceed forward? So there's 4 options here. So one, if there's an empty vault under the city sidewalk and the property owner is willing to get rid of the vault. Kind of as a design team, when we've talked with staff, the recommendation would be that we block in that wall, that opening that goes out into that vault, we block it in, and then we fill the vault or the void under the sidewalk, and then we can put back a normal sidewalk. That cost would be, typically we see that as a city cost, because that's kind of where we went as a team. The second option is if a vault exists and there's existing utilities or equipment in there, but the property owner is willing to get rid of the vault, we would ask the property owner to remove all of that equipment, hire out whatever necessary contractors are needed to remove that equipment from the vault. The city would then come in and block that wall up and then fill in the vault. And typically when we fill those vaults in, we can do a couple different options. We can look at filling them with sand, some sort of granular material, or even I've seen some concrete material in there as well, depending upon how big they are and what makes the most effective fill material. One of the other options or possible scenarios that we'll get into, if the vault exists, but the property owner does not want to get rid of the vault, how do we proceed with that? Because then if the property owner does not want to get rid of the vault, that means that we need to put essentially a new bridge deck over the top, remove that sidewalk, and build a new bridge or a new spanning sidewalk over that. There's several costs that come to that can get very expensive. A lot of those that we saw, that the ones that have utilities out in the right of way, they've got fire sprinkler stuff mounted to the ceilings. So now you're having to somehow support that existing piping while you pull the existing slab off and put a new one on. There's really 2 properties that this affects. Both of those properties we evaluated. We had some concrete cores done to see, is the slab in good enough shape that we can keep. Both of them really need to be replaced based on the structural condition of those. But it's kind of how do we do that? How do we go about that? We could leave pieces of that infrastructure in the right-of-way, fill the vault that they're not using, only keep the vault piece that has the fire pump in it, and then put a new top on it. That one, our recommendation would be to create some sort of agreement with the property owner to cover the costs for that top of the vault replacement, because that is definitely their option to have the equipment in the right-of-way. We cannot find at this point any easements that say they have the right to have that equipment in the right-of-way. Going back on dates, it could have been back far enough where it's not a recorded easement. We've looked through everything we can at the courthouse. And then
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that a smart, back in the day, that maybe was the thinking, the good way to do things, okay? But is it a smart thing to do now, especially for the cost and the trouble that we have?
As far as the building new ones?
Building new bridges over the top?
So, I mean, it's the specifically on the 2 that I'm really thinking about, it's the question of if we're going to leave them in place, who pays if we don't want to do the top and we want to fill it all in, so there's nothing in the right of way, who pays to move the fire suppression equipment then? That's probably another question that comes to be part of the project of, is that a city cost? Is that a property owner cost? That's a hard question that council would have to give some direction on.
What kind of cost, or, I mean, just a guesstimate to move the things out like that?
I don't even know with that piece on the fire suppression.
Not cheap, correct?
No, it's not going to be cheap. Because it's going to be rerouting all of your main flow where it comes in, and then all of the feeder lines where they go up into the building as well. And then relocating the actual fire pump itself. So I don't know a cost on that off the top of my head.
So if I can jump in quickly, if I'm hearing correctly, we're really debating these options based on 2 of the 5 volts you found, correct?
Well, the other 5, I think we want to make sure that we're because of the 5, 3 of them have said we don't need it, we're okay with it. We want to confirm, what does that look like? Who pays for what piece of it? And then with the 2 that actually have equipment in there, getting direction as far as how do we proceed forward and what is the city going to be? That way we're fair to both property owners and being the same.
Okay, so I'm probably going to ask a question you can't answer. This is specific to East Main Street, and so we're trying to be consistent. If we look at the future phases, do we have any idea of how many more volts we're going to encounter?
So if we want to look at percentage-wise, we went into 38 buildings. Of the 38 buildings, we had 5 that had large vaults. We have some that have smaller openings that are really easy to deal with, but we had 5 of the 38. So if we start to look going west, I know, and through talking with staff, I know of at least 3 on the West Main Street. So you'd probably have about that same percentage, I would anticipate, in that 5 to 8 range on the west side.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your Honor?
Yeah.
Greg, this is probably a question for Heather. What's liability for if the business, I guess I'm looking at, let the business owner decide, what's our liability if we bridge over it? Because I know they just bridged over one up in front of the Marshall County Annex building.
So right now, Greg mentioned that we've done research and we haven't been able to find any easement or anything like that. As we proceed with whatever direction you guys give us, if there's going to be any vaults that remain in the right-of-way, I do want a written, recorded easement that spells out that responsibility of that vault, including the top of the vault is the property owner's responsibility for maintenance. That would provide some liability protection for the city. So as we're talking about costs right here, of the 5 vaults that are located, if we went in there and we addressed it by either putting a new vault top on some of them that have existing utilities in it, if we're filling some of them that are a little easier to, we estimate that total package to be $440,000 in addressing these 5 vaults. We think there are cheaper alternatives if property owners are willing to do that. They may be taking a vault right now that's the entire width of their building, reducing it just to the location of their fire suppression system, and significantly reducing that cost. If we proceed with, hey, the city's going to take up the costs for any blocking of walls of vaults that are removed and putting in fill and sidewalk, and the property owner is responsible for the cost of the replacement vault top, or moving the equipment and the utilities that are in there, that would potentially bring the city's cost from $440,000 down to $75,000. And so that is, I think the direction or the staff recommendation is that's what you guys are giving us authorization to have those communication with property owners, that we make that offer. The city's responsible for blocking the wall, filling it in, putting sidewalk in, if they're willing to do that. And if not, we're going to ask that property owner to be responsible for the replacement of the vault top or moving those equipment and utility.
Any additional questions? Awesome. The last item, the last item really has to do with fire lines. So when we were doing that basement inspection, we also looked at what buildings have fire sprinklers today. Of the 38, we had 11 buildings that have fire sprinklers in them. So really the question is, as downtown starts to renovate and starts to grow, are there other buildings along here that need fire systems or sprinklers in their buildings? I know we talked to several of them that said, yep, I absolutely want it. I can talk to one of them, one of the buildings that they're renovating right now. He really wants to bring a sprinkler system in, but he's like, I don't want to pay to cut the street and do all that expense. So now if we have that street out, now is the time to start talking to these property owners to say, how can we make all of the future improvements better for these buildings? If we have the street torn up, we're going to be replacing water main. What does it look like to be able to potentially partner with these property owners to get them fire services? Through talking with all of the building owners throughout the thing. So there's 27 buildings without fire systems in them. From talking with all of them, I know at least, I would say rough count 12 would like it right now. Or expressed an interest, and yes, we would be interested in pursuing that based on plans they have for the building or other items. And so really the question is, how do we do this? One would be, we just offer the property owners, hey, we have the street open. If you want to put a fire service in, go ahead and you can do that during our project while the street is cut open. The city will take care of all the pavement on top, but you can put in your own fire line. The other potential option is that the city could put stubs in. We could go to these buildings and we could put stubs to the building face, so that way they wouldn't have to tear out pavement in the future. There's some that may want to connect at this point, some that may want to connect at a later date. That later date could also potentially come with a connection fee. You install this water line, if you want to hook to it, there's a certain fee that they would pay to connect to that. We could also look at doing that to set up, if there's people that don't want it right now, could we bring one service line in that could potentially feed 2 buildings and try to have some cost-effective measures there. The other option would be to incentivize property owners. So essentially have our contractor that does the work take the water main all the way into the building, stub up with a riser, and then put a cap on it. And then that could be a cost share with that property owner. They could either pay all of it or a portion of it, the ability to just help them get that fire service in there. So really looking for some direction from council as far as, is there a preferred option, or do you want some more information to be able to make that decision for the fire protection?
Do you have any idea how much it costs to stub out each building?
12,000. We have estimated about $12,000 to stub out per building.
Per building?
Yep.
So point of clarification, the 144,000 noted is just for the 12 noted, not for the 27 total.
Yep. It's for the 12 that kind of expressed interest in it.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I think I would be interested in stubbing out every building. Fire codes are not going to get more lax.
No, they're not.
We want people to be improving these downtown properties, and I think this is our opportunity to help people do that.
Thank you.
I agree with Jeff. I think every building ought to have its own stub out. You start sharing, problems arise.
The concern I would have potentially with sharing is if you have 2 buildings side by side that both need the sprinkler system at the same time, maybe that fire jumped a wall. Do you have enough pressure there? So having those separate lines, they're still ultimately fed off the same main in the street, but it helps that flow a little bit there as well.
And Greg, we're talking about a 4-inch in line stubbing in, right?
So that'll be something we'll have to work through. Our cost right now is based off an 8-inch stub, because it really depends upon the pressure that's needed. To each building's going to be a little bit different, and so not being a sprinkler designer and not knowing the final design of that building, it's really hard to judge that size. So our recommendation is we put an 8. It can always be reduced down to a 6 or a 4 if needed.
I'm okay with that, just so it's not undersized for a current fire code.
Yep.
Your Honor?
Yes.
So we're exploring this kind of the one dig policy, just trying to address any future upgrades, enhancements, unknowns. Is there any other utilities that we're aware of at this point that should be of consideration?
Yep. So through downtown, your sanitary is all in the alleys. So we won't get into sanitary at all with this project, which is nice. We do have storm sewer. That really doesn't tie into those buildings. And then we start to look at what does that do for other communication. And that's as we start to look at gas is all in the alleys. We will probably, as we get into Main Street, we'll find old gas main because that's where it used to be, but that's all in the alleys. Alliant has moved there, electric's in the alleys. So really the big question that comes back as we start to look at that future is communication. What do you have for telecommunication, for fiber, that type of stuff? So CenturyLink right now, actually, if you go into on the north side of Main Street, their communication line actually runs through the basements. It goes basement to basement to basement. Took us a while to figure out what that cable was. But so they've got that there. And with the alleys behind you, you've got a lot of variety to bring all your utilities in there. So at this point, I don't see a huge need for potentially other infrastructure upgrades. One of the things you could do if we think that we're going to see it in the future, we don't have it in the cost right now, but I've seen some other cities explore is putting in a duct bank. So you'll put in maybe 4 2-inch conduits, run them from corner to corner with a handhole on the end that gives a potential future space to be able to pull wire if somebody else wants to come in there. It's not in our cost right now, but that could be an option we could explore.
I personally like that idea.
One thing. The only concern ultimately when you get with that is as you start to get those combined duct banks, as you start to work with each individual utility company, if they ever want to use them, a lot of times it's if we have one handhole at the end, Mediacom doesn't want to be in the same handhole as Heart of Iowa. So then that starts to just create a little bit of nuances that you just have to think through with those agreements with those utility providers.
2 follow-up points on that as far as telecommunications go. We've had this discussion with some of the telecommunication providers in Marshalltown currently today about a shared conduits, spare conduits for future expansion, handholds, and those kind of things. We've actually gone as far as actually done an install on a project. If people remember Washington Street, that segment that went in with the Kading development, we did install a duct bank with that project. Telecommunication companies have elected not to utilize city-provided infrastructure. They would rather bore their own in so that they have their own handholds and they've got some more separation in between with other telecommunication companies. Just as we did with the State Street project and some of the other projects we've done recently, we do reach out and offer the ability for telecommunication companies to partner with us at this time, install their infrastructure. During State Street, we did not have anybody take us up on that. However, now that we're under construction, we did have a couple of companies come back and be like, oh, actually, while you're open, we do want to go in. And that's great. It's fine. We're working with them. It's going smoothly. And that would be an expectation of this project as well. Additionally, thank you, Councilor Isom. You are correct. I missed 3 words in regards to the 12 connections. It is that we estimate there are 12 locations that don't have access to the fire line connections now that would like it. Yep. So outlining the cost again for those 12 connections, we estimate about $144,000 of costs for those. Potential direction that we're looking for tonight is that A, city just takes it on ourselves, we put it in. B, the city offers the ability for a property owner to put it on. They would reimburse us for that cost. We don't want their own contractors coming in our right of way while we're doing this, but they can do the interior work and offer them that option. C would be city goes ahead and puts stuff in. We set up a connection fee district similar to what the sanitary sewer system has done, where there's $3,200 or $300 depending on where you connect in Marshalltown if it's a city installed sewer. We could look at something like that. We could also offer some type of a cost share or a voluntary multi-year assessment for property owners that want to do it now. Any questions on this item? Perfect. One more. I know Greg said last one, but I threw one at him at the end. Just want to make it clear that we are at the 30% level now. This is that opportunity to have those discussions about any additional collaboration and coordination that we want to have as far as amenity zones, art incorporation, and those types of items. I have a schematic up on the screen right now of what I'm going to call as an amenity zone. These are the bump outs. This one's particular at Center Street, where there's a little more room to do a little something different than just accommodate pedestrian traffic, vehicle traffic, bike lanes, parking, those types of things. This is one concept there at that corner, and here is another concept across the street. So there is room for something different, something special, something not just a sidewalk, not just a street, not just a parking area. So I don't want to give you guys what to do, but we would appreciate direction if you guys have ideas on how to work through that process. If you guys don't, and you guys want us to proceed with how we're working right now, the intent would be that we ask Bolton and Mink to come up with some of these concepts for the amenity zones and bring those back to you at another time. But again, I'm open to discussion and hearing your input.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Quick question. So this is hypothetically thinking a fall start date if everything aligns. Do we have a feel of the probability of that? Because if we're planning a spring 25 start, have we just gained 6 months in this design process, essentially?
Right. So one of the factors that we are looking at as far as the timeline of construction on this project is the State Street project. Right now, my best guess, although I'll be honest, we've made estimates on this project and realized they weren't the best estimates to begin with once we got underground. I believe the center two sections, 2 blocks of the State Street project are not going to start construction until next year. If they start construction at a similar time they started this year on March 27th, if they take approximately 5 months for that project to get going, we would want them to finish up with that project before the contractor starts on this project. So potentially, we're looking September, October is the earliest they could start. We would have to see at that point if they felt comfortable that they could get that phase completed before winter. We do not want them doing winter construction. Right now, we're estimating this project to be 3 construction phases, each taking approximately 5 months. So to answer your question, there's a good chance, I'd say maybe 60% chance that construction wouldn't start till spring 2025. So if the direction right now was to pause, it likely would have a good chance of not delaying construction.
Thank you.
Okay, so I made it through my list. Thank you all for bearing with us tonight. I do appreciate this conversation just so that we can all be on the same page moving forward. I think now is an appropriate time to go ahead and open it up to the public, and then we'll run through these items one by one and get some direction. Thank you.
At this point, because we've had more items than I can count, I'm tempted to go item by item. And let's do that for public comment.
All right, item number 1, discussion of angle parking.
Any public comment about that?
Hi, Erin Carpenter, 802 North 4th Street. I love back-in angle parking down in the East Village in Des Moines. It really is the best thing since sliced bread. And I would love to see it used more often anywhere that we can put it in. It is so much safer. When you are backing in, there is not traffic behind you that you have to worry about, really. When you are backing into the street, who knows what's going to come down the street? A bicycle, a car. So the back-in angle parking, I am very strong supporter of. Thank you.
Anyone else on angle versus back-end parking? We kind of do a straw poll up here.
I would say, can we ask for council direction?
Yeah.
Options again, proceed with back and angled parking, stick with head-in angled parking, or try to do a test section for a block along the east side of the courthouse.
You want to throw one of those ideas out?
Your Honor?
Yes.
Back in angle parking everywhere that you can put it. Second.
All right, let's go.
Anybody wish, well, let's consider that was a motion and a second. Any further discussion up here? Otherwise, let's call the roll on that one.
Yes.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop, Isom,
Yes.
Okay, back and angle parking is this.
Thank you for that direction. Next discussion item are the bike lanes. The options for this item would be to keeping them on Center Street or going ahead and relocating them to Second Street.
Public comment on that?
Your Honor, I motion move them to Second Street.
Second.
I'll go ahead and call for a second, but then we'll have some discussion.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Any?
Erin Carpenter, 802 North 4th Street. I think that this comes down to a fundamental question of who we're designing the streetscape for. Are we designing it for people or for cars? And I would like to see more opportunities for bicycle traffic, not less. I think that if we want to be I'm so excited about this project. I think it's going to be beautiful. I think that Marshalltown deserves to have a gorgeous downtown streetscape like this. And I want us to think about how we can be progressive in terms of accommodating all types of traffic and making it as safe as possible for the most number of people. Vehicles do not have to worry about safety from bicycles. they don't have to worry about damage that pedestrians cause them. It's the other way around. We should be looking out for the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists and putting more restrictions on vehicles, especially in an area like this where we want to see people walking around, supporting these businesses, and like in this lovely rendering, using these spaces as a community space. Thank you.
Sorry. Cindy Parks, 127 East Main Street, also president of MCBD. Thank you for your hard work and your time. I am a bicyclist. I do not feel safe on Main Street bicycling. Putting that in on State Street, I agree completely. I do think we are a progressive community. We like bicycles. We ride our bikes. I didn't even know there's bike lanes, honestly, on Center Street. So I never bike there. I don't feel safe. I do use Second Street a lot, so I go by your office a lot. Thank you for your consideration. I agree with that completely. Just making it a straight shot and making it a little more convenient and a little more safe, not only for the drivers of the vehicles that have to worry about people that sometimes don't, some bicyclists that don't use the stop signs and the actual bike lanes. Yeah, making it safer for everybody, not only the bicyclists, but the motor vehicle people as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Anybody else wish to comment publicly? We have a motion on the, oh,
I will, Your Honor, real quick while Linda's walking up. I just want to say thank you to the flashing lights at the crossings over on Lincoln Way / Madison for the trail. And I guess the only reason I like the Second Street idea is just from a location of where future trailhead will be, where the Ann Kaiser Trust connects to the Y and to where that location will be. I think from a location of where existing traffic off of the trail exists today and how that connects in from a future state makes sense. So I'm not for one or the other, but I understand at least the direction that Jeff has proposed.
Lena?
Linda Clark, 306 South Second Avenue. I'd like to make a comment. I remember when it was stated no bicycles on the sidewalk up in the Main Street area. And I was nearly run down by a bicycle walking on South 3rd Avenue coming from the post office. And when you watch and see how they're operating bicycles throughout the city, there are many places it's not safe at all for a pedestrian to walk. And we have older people, elderly people that are having to use electric, scooters and things around. And so, they're wanting, it's nice if it's a younger generation, but we do have a lot of older people that require to have handicap accessible sidewalks. And we need to have safety for everybody, not just the younger generation, but for our older generation. And when they're skateboarding and they're doing all kinds of things all throughout the city, and they're not really looking where they're going or what they're trying to do, I'm not walking around Marshalltown like I used to many years ago. Thank you for your time.
I just about hit 2 kids on bikes today that were crossing the street on sidewalks down by Lowe's Flowers. I mean, I literally, if I'd been older or slower, 2 kids were going to go down. And I should have stopped and rolled the window down and yelled at them, but they were going too fast. And then back to the flashing signs, it is good to see, although I've been following somebody who came up to 9th Street, saw the flashing lights, saw a bicyclist come out, and the motor slowed down to the point where then it became a question of who has the right of way. And I don't know, and so we probably need to figure that out and have public education on that, at least for those of us that are biking that trail or riding on the streets there.
But everyone's slowing down, so
Yeah,
it's a safer
exactly.
environment. Yeah.
Truly. Yeah. Okay, let's call a roll on that one.
Hill?
We're on option 2, correct?
Yeah, option 2 is go to
Yes.
2nd Street.
Lottie
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Hoop? Isom?
Very good.
And then, Your Honor, before we go on, Greg, you said that would free up about 10 feet on Center Street, and you're going to have that loading zone north of Main. Can we use that 10 feet for a loading zone south of Main?
So if we use that loading zone south of Main, then we'll probably end up taking out parking stalls to be able to do that.
I was just thinking of Pence Appliance. Not sure how they're
We'll
gonna.
look at it and we'll look at some options, see what it gives us.
Speaking of the loading zone on Center Street, the one that's proposed north of Main Street is taking away the parallel parking on one side. Since we're talking about south of Center Street now and potentially adding a loading zone, the opportunity to have a loading zone would probably be limited to the center of the road, because then we would be taking parking away, as Greg echoed. Okay, discussion item number C is lighting. The direction we're looking for at this time is whether to relocate existing lights or go ahead and replace those at this time.
Let's go with public comment first.
Deb Millizer, MCBD 16 East Main Street. It's been a long evening. I don't know about you. You got padded seats. We don't. I've been squirming. Okay, so I would really like to see, well, I'm kind of torn. I would like to see brighter light in the downtown. And if the newer lights do that, I would lean that towards that option. I hear that complaint all the time, that it's really dark in the downtown. If we're moving to a direction to where we want to use our downtown for entertainment, have businesses open later in the evening and all of that, we're going to have to do something about the lighting. I hear about it all the time. I realize that they're talking about adding pedestrian lighting in addition to the lighting that we have now. Honestly, I don't know what that looks like really, but I can tell you that right now, one of the things that I hear about quite often is the lighting in the downtown. I would like to see something that was brighter, something that just made people feel safer, have that perceived feeling of being safe when they're walking down Main Street. So my preference is new lighting, but I just want brighter light.
Don't leave yet.
Okay.
All of your items on there, flags, wreaths, banners, holiday lights, flower baskets.
Yeah, so.
Where does the MCBD stand on that stuff?
Okay, so we've talked about this. We definitely want to keep our banners. We love our military banners. That is something, I mean, our branding banners are great, but we're a large military community, so we would like to keep those banners up there. I think it's really a point of pride for our community. Reese, you all just gave me $20,000 last year. We're not getting rid of the wreaths. I'm looking for options on how we could put some more lighting in the downtown for the holiday season. I'd love to have snowflakes or something else up there as well. So I want to light up the downtown. In general, I want to light up the downtown. As far as the flower baskets, that is a long time tradition. And, thinking about street trees, and street trees are about 10 to 12 feet high to begin with, if I remember correctly. Our baskets are like 9 feet in the air. The trees you're not gonna see them. You're not gonna see them. So we would like to take our fundraising that we do and put it towards the berms. The berms are really lacking right now. We're struggling with volunteers to be able to clean up those berms. So if you know anybody who loves gardening and wants to come down and help us out, I'd appreciate it, because when I drive by there, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the berm. So we, as an organization, if we double our amount of berms in the downtown, we're gonna have to have funding to do that. So we can't do the flower baskets and the berms. So it has to be one or the other. And I also suggest vegetation that's easy to take care of as well, and something that's very distinct that it's supposed to be in there. Because right now it's like, what is supposed to be in there and what can you pull? And I'm not a master gardener, so I might be pulling petunias or something else out that's supposed to be there. Anything else?
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
So if we do go the route for new light poles, how many plug-ins do you want on each light pole?
24.
More than one, right?
More than one. We have 2 right now.
I think they did accomplish that at the last minute down at the MAC building. I know that was, some of the vendors that came for an event down there wanted to make sure that they could plug in. And I know the lights were up. I hope there were outlets added there too.
Well, I know that during the holiday season, people really love the lights in the downtown. They do want more, so I'll take as many plug-ins as I can get.
Yeah. And my pipe dream is to have lights strung across the street like Paris and some of the other.
I hear that quite
cities.
frequently too. I just don't have the volunteers to do it.
Gary's retired. Heather, if I got you right, are you talking, it's about $300,000 difference?
Correct, 334,000.
Okay, I think it would be foolish for us to put up, repurpose the light, put them back up, and there's no parts available, or it's hard to get at, everything like that. I think we need to look to the future on this, so we don't create a headache for downtown. I know 300,000 is a lot of money, but I also think downtown's dark, and dealing with that, let's just do this thing right. So I would make a motion that we go with new lighting for the downtown area.
Second?
I would second Mike.
Okay.
I agree with what he said. Brighter, safer downtown is perfect. I've also seen some really neat public art installations with old light poles installed very densely in parks. It's kind of neat, so maybe something we can look at to repurpose our existing ones.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
That's, Jeff stole my thunder, but yeah, if we're going to have 31 lights on this first round and then have more, I think it's an opportunity to use them in one of the parks, for something. And the only thing I'd say to Mike's motion and Jeff's second is, I still would like to stay with a historic look of the light poles, if at all possible.
Given the historic
I agree with you on
Main
that,
Street
Gary.
designation, I can't imagine we would go anywhere else than that. Yeah, good point.
Work with the Arts and Culture Alliance, Deb, the downtown business owners, and come up with a light design that everyone likes. But I agree with Gary that, the historic look is nice, it just needs to be brighter.
Is light pollution a concern anymore? I know.
It is. That'll be something that we'll need to evaluate, especially as we talk about second-story housing. We want to make sure that the photometrics are shining the light in an appropriate area. Right now, I believe we have lights on both sides of the poles. The ones on the street side stay on overnight. The ones on the business side turn off, I believe, around 11 p.m., give or take. So we can look at some stuff like that. We can also look at different heights. Maybe street side is one height, sidewalk side is another height to kind of minimize that light transfer to the second stories.
I can't remember if it was Kansas City or St. Louis. One of those two went through a major change to limit the light pollution to make sure everything went down instead of up. Yeah. Okay.
As much as I would like to say I want strobe lights downtown, I called the motion a question.
All right, let's do that.
Thompson?
Roll call.
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Hoop? Isom?
Yes.
Kell?
Yes.
Laddiehoff?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Very good. Staff has direction on that one.
Thank you. Next item is vegetation and berms. The direction I'm looking for tonight is consensus, that we continue the relationship we currently have with MCBD in maintaining the berms along Main Street as proposed.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Anybody wish to comment up here or out there on that one?
Aaron, just stay up here.
I think this is the last one. Okay. Erin Carpenter, 802 North 4th Street. Thank you for appointing me to the Stormwater Advisory Council this evening. I wonder if there has been any discussion previously about using these as an opportunity for redirecting stormwater.
Not at this current time with the design. I know there was some stormwater considerations given during the downtown master plan and downtown implementation plan. However, at this time, I don't know the extent of those discussions and how far they went.
In that case, I would just like to encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you. It is kind of fun to see what they did at privately owned but publicly occupied park over by Tannen. The way that they captured that and used it. And, I mean, people keep coming around from the state to see what they did here.
Yeah, again, Cindy, 127, Cindy Parks, 127 East Main Street. I do live in that building that has the little lovely garden wall on it, Barb Hagstrand's building. If that would alleviate some of our burden, the MCBD, we love beautifying the downtown. I love the flower baskets as much as everybody else because it's one of the very pretty things that we have going on with no vegetation there at this point. And then when Heather said that they're thinking about doubling and tripling all of the greenery downtown, it's a lot to take care of. Not only cost-wise, but volunteer-wise, and we're limited in that scope. If we could hire somebody, that costs money as well. That's not super feasible either. So looking into stormwater, that would be great. But we are more than happy to take care of some berms with some vegetation. Like we said, we'd like to be a part of that conversation. So thank you very much.
On the direction on the stormwater water items, if some of these landscaped areas are transitioned to more of a green water infrastructure, those generally have a higher installation cost, a higher maintenance cost, and a higher labor requirement to make sure that those bioretention cells are able to sustain the stormwater that's coming into them.
Heather, are we talking about the actual design, or are we just talking about the plantings?
We're talking about the planting areas. Yeah, so those planting areas right now are located kind of behind the back of curb. There's green stormwater infrastructure methods that allow those to be a potential to bring stormwater into those prior to them going into a storm sewer system. The sizing of those is such that they need to get larger than what we have proposed right now. That's part of the reason that the maintenance and costs both on operating and maintenance side of it would be higher.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Heather, I like just what we're doing right now, even though I would love to go the direction that Aaron's talking about. But we're too far into this, I think, to change it. I do like the idea of hiring a company to have a standardized look throughout the whole downtown instead of the hodgepodge of the berms and who's responsible. So I think I definitely like the idea of ownership staying with the MCBD, but hiring working with them to hire a firm to control all this.
Is that a motion?
We already have one.
Oh, we did. Okay, thank you.
Ready to vote?
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop, Isom,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
The gator blocked me today when I was trying to get out of the parking lot. And I also then got to learn how many gallons are going into the
To the flower baskets. Discussion item, the next one is outdoor dining spaces. The options on the table tonight is to proceed with the design as shown, allow for potential future discussion for potential parklets. Option B would be to provide for a 4.5-foot spot along the facade of buildings that would modify the design that we have currently going in with the location of the street trees and street lights to try to best accommodate that we can for where those outdoor dining spaces would be. Option C would be to look at the businesses that are there today and modify the curb lines to accommodate outdoor seating areas right now that would be part of the sidewalk. Staff recommends option A.
I got the impression there was a consensus already C was off the table. Anybody wish to make a motion about A or B or C?
I would move that we go with A because we already have codes that define how much space they have to leave open on the sidewalks if they put tables up.
Second.
Very good. Any other comment on it? Let's call the roll.
Lottie Hoff,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Hoop, Isom,
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you. The next item is a discussion about building improvements and assistance to property owners in relation to private vaults and stairs in the city right-of-way. If we go with the outlined option previously, where we make an offer to property owners to essentially, city's responsible for blocking in walls, filling the vaults, putting on a new sidewalk. If they'd like to keep their vault, we're going to ask them to make the improvements either to put a new top on, if they want to get rid of it, relocate their utilities to inside their building. Again, that would take an estimated $440,000 and reduce that down to a city cost of $75,000. And we're looking for concurrence on that direction as we have those communication and agreements with property owners.
And move to proceed as laid out for desired direction or concurrence in the memo.
I'll second that.
Anybody wish to comment? Roll call.
Your Honor, I'd like to
Yep,
comment.
you may.
Please do me a favor, do all of us a favor. When you write this up, do not number the number of vaults with the contractor, because I'll bet you money right now you're going to find more vaults that you don't know exist, that just have a fake wall. And if you define them, we're going to get change orders.
We will look at potential to bid that out as a square foot basis for blocking in a basement wall and a cubic yard basis for fill.
Should we call the roll?
Walker.
Yes.
Hoop. Isom.
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
Bodyhoff.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Next item is the discussion of building improvements and assistance in relation to fire lines. There are several options on the table. Option A, cities installs. Maybe I should match the memo, apologize. Option A, city offers property owners the ability to install at their cost. Option B, the city installs it at our cost. We do have the option to then set up a connection fee in the future. Option C, the city offers an option or an incentive at this time for property owners to provide that stub, either as a partial cost share or a voluntary multi-year assessment.
Your Honor, I move that we go with option B, that we stub them all.
I'll second
I'd
that.
second.
Anybody wish to discuss? Let's call the roll.
Isom.
Yes.
Kell.
Yes.
Bodyhoff.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Hoop.
Got it?
Thank you for that direction. One follow-up on that is, what level would you like me to set that connection fee at? Would you like me to set that at a 50% level of the cost of us putting it in, 100% level? Give me a little bit of direction as I'm communicating with the property owners.
Your Honor, if I may, Heather, what's our time frame? Your department probably needs to do a little more study, because I'm sure that $300 sewer hookup came from somewhere. There's got to be a hookup charge for stubbed in water mains. So can you get back to us? Or are you racing a clock today?
I'm not racing the clock today. I do know there was an engineering study put together regarding the $3,200 sewer connection fee, and that was the cost of the estimated city expense to install that length of main of an average house. That's how that was established. Obviously, it's more today, and we've not raised that connection fee. So that would probably be closer to the 100% level at the time that it was implemented. And so maybe if we go about the percent level, we know right now that it's an estimated $12,000 per building.
Can you come back to us with a separate resolution for this?
You bet.
Please do a little more study.
Yep.
I know that when I looked at buying a building downtown, I was told that the cost of tapping into the water main to sprinkle the building was $20,000.
That does not shock me. I think that's reasonable.
So I know anything less than 20 is going to be a good thing, but let's be fair though, okay?
I will do that.
I think it really behooves us to cover at least some of the costs, just because we need all those buildings sprinkled at some time.
I will do that. I will put a resolution together with some options on costs for that. Last item was more of an open discussion, open direction as far as next steps on amenity zone, art incorporation and collaboration, and I'm hoping to any feedback.
Anybody wish to?
Your Honor, I guess I'll ask two questions. Are you looking feedback on like what the engagement looks like, or specifically in the section that we're talking about for Main Street reconstruction, if we wanted to say, we want to do something like what's on the screen here, even though I'm not quite sure what the details are, we want to do one here, here, and here.
I think I'm looking for direction of whether we would like Bolton and Mink to proceed with kind of the concepts and outlines that they have for the amenity zones, or if we would like to look at some outside input for determining those in more detail.
I'm going to say the latter personally.
I would agree with Gabe. I think this has kind of been a point of contention on this project is how comprehensive of scope are we looking at on these. So I think I'd like to see more.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Heather and Greg, if we leave if we leave these spots that are earmarked for art, if we just leave them plain, does it change how we put the blocking in, how we decorate the concrete, because if I was to say, if we just put in platforms now, we don't know what the art will be as time goes on. Because I'm assuming, are you going to be able to line up all the artwork if we go that direction? Or are we still going to have some spots that we're unknown on what the artwork could be?
I think if the direction is that we would like some outside engagement, my recommendation at the time would be to go ahead and do that engagement and collaboration now, and not just allow for podiums, foundations and those kind of things for future spots. I think that limits the ability for someone to make a decision on what they'd like in those areas. So if that's the direction, I'm hearing some consensus here. What does that engagement process look like for you guys? Would you like me to ask Bolton and Mink to pause on the design to allow us that process and that time to do that? That's okay. Like we talked before, we do have a few months in there that more than likely would not change the outcome of where construction would start.
Your Honor, did we budget something for art with part of this?
We have not.
That's part of the broken process.
I would propose we pursue meaningful engagement, which likely delays this till spring, would be my recommendation.
I agree with Barry.
I guess, Gary, to the question you asked earlier too, you talk, like if you're going to do something with creative bollards or something else downtown, I mean, you're talking impacts to the current design. And I don't know, if I'm thinking that we're going to make downtown something better than what it is today, I don't want to put creative placemaking in a place that already exists when we're redeveloping that place from the ground up to begin with. So that's my thought process on, I guess, kind of what Barry said from a timeline perspective. I'd rather do it right rather than fit something, square peg in a round hole.
I'm seeing a lot of head shaking yes on that one.
I'm going to make an option on the table as far as how to start this process, and let me know how you'd like it modified. Why don't I set up a public open house forum that's open to all members of the public and the organizations that everybody feels should be at the table. I will give a similar presentation to what you've seen tonight as far as where we're at. I do think it is important to have the level that we're at, the 30%, to understand what we need for space and what space we have available. So I do think that was good effort made. But I think at the time, I think we'll go ahead and set up an open house type meeting and get feedback from that meeting on maybe what the next steps would like to be.
Your Honor, how many spaces were, just in this 5-block area, how many spaces were earmarked for public art or some kind of feature?
We never went that far. We allowed there to be amenity spaces at all bump outs potentially at this point. So we've not taken that next step. We did have a diagram that indicated, hey, there could be an art piece here, but we never went further than, possibilities and the schematic that you see in front of you.
The question then becomes too, as part of that process, do you incorporate the city-county discussion, right? That becomes a big part of this if we want to do something different, because this didn't take any of that into consideration when they had that conversation, and that's the big question mark for me. So I guess I'm game with what you laid out if Do you need a motion for that, or are you good with?
I'm good with that direction. If everybody's on board with that, then I'll also open up that open house to the county and let them know that at that time, we would like some discussion in regards to the north yard of the courthouse and how that may proceed.
I think that's the consensus.
North and west.
That's fair.
For this, north and west for this phase.
Yeah, right now, we've had several meetings with the county, and the communication feedback we've got from Facilities and Ground with the county is that the north portion of the courthouse square is what's available for some type of a community plaza space. But that doesn't mean the west side of the courthouse isn't on the table as well. So again, thank you all. I know this took a lot of time this evening. I do appreciate it all, just to kind of get this project all working in the same direction. So thank you.
Just know that we appreciate what you're doing with Bolton and Mink too, so, and CBD. We have a lot of good collaboration things going on in this city right now, truly. Okay, unless there's any other business for the good of the cause, let's adjourn the meeting at, 8:47 p.m. Thanks for coming. I think my beans are cold. I don't know. Yeah. Same here. Yeah. Only twice have I had to leave to go to the bathroom. Yeah, but I'm bringing tea.
It goes up there.